The Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight here in Austin. Alex is joining us live, and he's going to be breaking down the news today, and we've got a lot happening today. We've got a couple of very important guests. One of them is an Atlanta businessman that you won't know, but you've heard this story before. Somebody being illegally arrested because they've got a handgun. In this particular case, he was arrested for loitering on his own property. His car was confiscated, and his handgun was taken even though he had a concealed carry permit, and it was suggested to him by local law enforcement that he had that. He'll be joining us on the show, as will Pastor James David Manning, because there's been a lot of talk about Obama as a dictator, and that's even being egged on by those on the left, urging him to use his executive power to just enact minimum wage reform, to ignore the immigration laws. So we see that happening over and over again. Alex?
That's right, and I'm going to be here breaking it all down today with you, popping in with breaking news analysis there from the Infowars.com News Center. Also, we've known this plan for 11 years since TSA was basically set up, almost 12 years now, that they're going to grope everyone and harass everyone until people say, please do anything but grope us and put us in body scanners. And now they're coming out with these, quote, smart tunnels, like smart growth and everything else, where they will biometrically scan you, and the pod doors lock when you come into the airport, when you go through the scanners, and then when you try to exit, these pod bay doors, like prison doors, like Italian bank doors. They have these in Italy where you go in and a door closes and then another door opens. They are putting these high-tech systems in with taxpayer money and then rolling out the previous TSA system onto the streets of America. And then they'll roll these armored doors out onto the streets with hardened checkpoints on the highways that they've already purchased thousands of. So this is a total takeover plan. I want to break that down. If folks go to drudgereport.com, it's the easiest place to find Paul Watson's article. It's red linked on the right-hand side of drudgereport.com. And again, it's up on prisonplanet.com, mirrored there as well, because Infowars.com does go down every once in a while, so we have the backup prisonplanet.com. It also has some news on the site, obviously, that is unique to prisonplanet.com. But if you look up on Infowars.com, you will see a video from years ago where I talked about Nelson Mandela and his wife, Winnie, his ex-wife now. He divorced her when he got out of prison, who is a monstrous person. Totally monstrous. Nelson Mandela himself, there's a lot to admire about him. I've been very, very clear about that. Very intelligent, very smart guy, also extremely vicious. But, you know, one man's vicious terrorist is another man's George Washington. I mean, George Washington helped wipe out a bunch of the Iroquois nation in the French and Indian War and other things. So definitely a manly man. But also the heir of one of the four major nations, that is African nations in South Africa. And that's who Winnie would go out and kill, was the black people mainly. Folks have to understand that between the Zulus and all these other groups, and he wasn't a Zulu, he was the king. He was never crowned, but he was the king apparent of a large portion of South Africa. And then that's never even discussed. Why was this guy put forward as the leader later by de Klerk and others after he was in jail for 27 years? It was because he was definitely an insider with the Russians. Previous to that, they were going to make him the king of South Africa, basically. And then when that failed, he was in his guerrilla war, blowing up military bases, you name it, blowing up trains, targeting civilian targets. Whenever that, quote, terrorist guerrilla war, that's his quote, failed, they threw him in jail for 27 years. And when he came out after leading that war, then they set him up and made him president, and then he betrayed the South African people big time. There's no doubt, and that's why you see all the New World Order worshiping him, is because he was their guy. And hey, I might break after 27 years in prison. I'm not. I mean, he's definitely a very interesting character. We're going to break down the real Mandela straight ahead.
Strategic.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight here in Austin. Alex is joining us on the road, and we're going to be joined later in the program with a couple of interviews. We've got a businessman out of Atlanta who was arrested on his own property. He had his gun confiscated, even though he had a concealed carry permit. He had his car towed, and He still has not been reimbursed for his car towing, and he's not gotten his gun back, and it's been over a year. We're going to have him on talking about his case with his lawyer. We also have Pastor James David Manning out of New York, and he's going to be talking about Obama as dictator, because we're seeing more and more often in Washington that people are accusing him of that. We even see people using the quote-unquote I word, impeachment. Well, that's long overdue, and we're going to be talking about exactly what he's doing and calls from the left for him to do even more executive orders, even more dictatorship. But right now we've got Alex on the line. Alex?
That's right. I'm going to be hosting the entire 3 hours here with David Knight, giving us breaking news and analysis today. Again, I'm here in East Texas for a funeral for my cousin who died, but I will be back Sunday in studio, Lord willing, 4 to 6 p.m. Central Standard Time with the Sunday broadcast as well. And, of course, there's Infowars Nightly News hosted by the great crew there, 7 o'clock Central. Now, we're going to cover a lot of news and information today. We're going to break down the entire waterfront on the economy, on very important police state developments, on huge developments where, as David Knight just pointed out, the authoritarians that camouflage themselves as the left are all over the news. And we have articles on this right now at Infowars.com, Prisonplanet.com. It's now being picked up even by the Washington Post, and others have been saying, is Obama a dictator? Howard Dean came out and said, well, he is acting like a dictator, but maybe that's what we need. So again, create the crisis, offer the solution, which is more power, then things get worse, then offer the solution, more power, and then things get worse, offer the solution, more power. This is a classic communist tactic of problem, reaction, solution, of Cloward and Piven is one of the more modern examples from the 60s of official university studies and reports on how to bankrupt the country, how to get us onto welfare, make us dependent, and finally totally bankrupt the system to cover the re-education of the nation. Use that crisis to bring in total control, social unrest, and then out of the ensuing crises, only a centralized collective like government backed with corporations, and then using sports as propaganda to overlay their takeover message in sports messages. They found that's a way to unify people. So first they break things down, then they unify people through propaganda in sitcoms, dramas, movies, TV shows, education, sports mainly. That's their main tool. Nelson Mandela bragged that was their main tool, using sports as propaganda. And then finally rebuild the new society. And we're going to be going over all of that here today on this live Friday edition as we broadcast worldwide. We've also got huge new domestic police state news on the front of the TSA. Now, I'm going to break down from now until the bottom of the hour in some detail. Again, I'm on the road. If I was there at the office, I could have all these printed out and all the areas highlighted I wanted to cover. But I'll give kind of a gestalt of who Nelson Mandela really was and what he did in South Africa coming up in just a few minutes. And then at the bottom of the hour, Jakari Jackson is doing a report on this in the Nightly News tonight. He was the one that discovered this vicious new article in Esquire with an Army military officer saying, quote, yes, we will pry the guns from your cold, dead hands. And so David Knight and I will read over some of these quotes and cover that at the bottom of the hour. I have Don Salazar right now and Kurt Nimmo posting the article on Infowars.com so you can comment on it. Just a snippet of the first part of the article and some of the quotes. Then we will write a whole response article under that snippet. That's how I want that done, to respond to this. But the Pentagon's main mission now, not just internationally, but domestically, is to respond to indigenous groups that don't want to be taken over by the globalists, by the corporate New World Order. Our military is becoming a backup arm. It has been for a long time, but a pure backup arm of authoritarian takeover. And you've got West Point, you've got the Army War College, all of them training to, quote, fight the Tea Party gun owners, returning veterans, libertarians, anybody that isn't basically a communist or an elitist above that. Because, again, it's always big banks and power that funds communism and socialism and domestication at a low level. Because if you're pigs or cows, you know, in a barn being fed, collectivized, you are pretty much given an equal amount. And then, of course, you've got the people that live in the farmhouse, you know, 50 yards away, though. That's the establishment. You know, so you're going to live in a 200-square-foot coffin apartment and work in a slave factory for the greater good of everyone in the collective. They're going to take your money and they're going to live offshore in 500-room palaces with 25 jets apiece, ocean liners, 747s with pleasure palaces, and Luxembourg and Switzerland, and you know they're going to have 20, 30 mistresses. The Saudi princes are going to have whole harems of hundreds of women. It's the same deal. And of course, they're all the ones promoting that we be socialized and that middle class not be able to have guns or family raise their children or own property, because this is what modern slavery is. And so we're going to be breaking that down coming up at the bottom of the hour with David Knight. But David, give folks just a brief minute or two on the headline, who this guy is, and some of his quotes, a foreshadowing of what's coming up, because this is the mainlining of the culture where the American people are the enemy and will be disarmed by the military now under globalist control.
Well, this guy, Alex, was a lieutenant colonel, and he taught history at West Point. And that's a very important position, because he's not just teaching them how to clean their rifle. He's shaping their worldview. And this is how he starts out the article. He says, "My job at the end of the day is about killing. I orchestrate violence, but my profession is about directed violence on behalf of the nation." But by that, what he really means is the government. That's what he sees as the nation. And he goes on to, yeah, exactly. He goes on to say he's got a program here about how he's going to limit guns to just smoothbore or rifle muzzle loading black powder muskets. But here's what he says in point number 2. "We will pry your gun from your cold, dead fingers because I am willing to wait until you die, hopefully, of natural causes. Guns, except for the 3 approved categories, cannot be inherited. When you die, your weapons will be turned to the local police department, which will then destroy them." Then he says police departments would no longer be allowed to sell or auction weapons. Then he says he would submit a new tax on ammunition. In the first 2 years, 400% of the current retail price. Thereafter, it would increase by 20% a year.
We're going to cover that at about 35 or 40 after. We're going to break that down in detail. That's just a foretaste.
Yeah.
We're going to give you his name, everything. The article is going up on Infowars.com right now. But I just want to stop and explain something to everybody. West Point is training the entire officer corps, the elite officer corps for the U.S. Army. So, and he's not the only one. This is pretty much, you don't get a job there now unless you do this. And this is why there's a culling of the general staff of the military as well. And remember, a secondary West Point for officers in ROTC, I'd say it's in the top 10 of lower level officer schools, would be something like College Station and Texas A&M. And at Texas A&M, they now have professors teaching in the military history. There's no right to guns. We will take your guns. The Constitution's bad. We're going to get rid of free speech, too. So this is open enemy operations, open saboteurs, open infiltrators of the foreign megabanks that have captured America. That isn't rhetoric. That's what's happened. Literally teaching sedition and treason. And you have free speech in this country to say anything you want, as long as it doesn't call for violence against someone, unless you're in government or in a critical infrastructure area teaching the overthrow of the Bill of Rights and Constitution. That is illegal. 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 I mean, if I was preaching the overthrow of the office of the presidency and putting something new in, that would be illegal. If the president was executing the Bill of Rights and Constitution. So this is sedition from within the system, but it's not really sedition because these are globalist operators and they're foreign officers. And by the way, they have the, what's his name, Thomas Barnett, one of the Army War College top professors. You can see his C-SPAN interviews because C-SPAN has them all archived back 25 years now online for free. You can just search it. We got to do a flashback on Thomas Barnett giving lectures on C-SPAN, but to the generals. C-SPAN come and shows him talking to the generals. And he goes, listen, you serve the New World Order. You serve foreign corporations and banks, and you serve the centralized system now, and America doesn't exist. You serve Wall Street. Everyone is a piece of stock, a human resource. And that's the way it is. And they just beat them with this until they give into it or say they're for it, and they get promoted. We have to remember with Barnett and others, there's a whole bunch of these guys. We have to remember with Barnett and all the rest of them that the key to all of this is that, again, they're openly operating for foreign power. And it's just like in the film Network, where the executive calls in the anchor and says, you have meddled with the tidal forces of nature, Mr. Beale, and you will atone. And that's basically what this is they are bringing us into a corporate system where we have no rights except with our piece of stock. But even that has no rights. So it's a modern, high-tech form of slavery. Now, David and listeners, when we come back, I'm going to get into Nelson Mandela and break down who he really was, and a little bit into the next segment because I've gotten behind as usual. Then we're going to look at this particular lieutenant colonel, who's not the only one. You have to understand, this is the new officer class. This is it. I mean, this is happening. And they're culling the military of anyone who's pro-America, pro-liberty. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight here in Austin, but Alex is hosting the show live on the road, and he's going to be giving us his breakdown of Nelson Mandela, because Nelson Mandela, as you know, passed away yesterday, and all of the news is all about Nelson Mandela, and what we've seen is one hagiography after the other, as if he didn't have anything wrong with him. And of course, as Alex pointed out earlier, there is nobody like that. Everybody has good and bad in their life. So he's going to give us his breakdown of Nelson Mandela. Alex?
Thank you, David. Again, yesterday the crew just went and did a search of anything I'd ever said about Nelson Mandela and put it out. And when I said about Nelson Mandela and his wife was totally true, but I want to break it down within a larger context so people understand my real view of Nelson Mandela. And I'm by no means an expert on Nelson Mandela, but compared to the general public, I mean, I know literally 1,000 times more, because I've actually tried to study it. And for anyone informed, that's why watching the news is like watching or tuning into the mind of someone on PCP. I mean, it does not resemble anything based in reality. And I have found African history, as well as many other histories, very, very interesting. So I've read a lot of history books from different perspectives on Africa, but let's just put it to you this way. The whole world's been barbarous and totally insane and murderous and unbelievably out of control. Africa has been as bloody or bloodier than any other place in history. And South Africa itself has been the epicenter of just unbelievable hell on earth for thousands of years. You had huge, different, diverse African tribes always battling for that area because it was very, very fertile and had a lot of resources. And Mandela was to be the king of one of the most powerful tribes in southern Africa, the Xhosa, if I'm pronouncing that right, Xhosa. And Winnie Mandela, his wife, and I'm just giving folks a quick snap gestalt on this, was a literal demon who would run around murdering African groups. Just to explain, folks, our media gives us this one-dimensional image that it's white people and black people killing each other in Africa. No, look at the Boer War that Winston Churchill was in when England invaded South Africa to attack the Afrikaners, the Dutch, and there was also French settlements. There was a whole bunch of settlements, folks. Everyone was killing everybody. Okay, 24/7, and you'd have different white groups that allied with different black tribes, just like the French and Indian Wars, where you'd have the French with one group of Indians, natives, you'd have the British with another, you'd have the Spanish backed by another. This is the way the world was, and Hollywood and the media just totally dumb it down. And I'm not defending any group. I'm not an Afrikaner, never been to Africa, never been to South Africa. I'm not a French Afrikaner. I'm not a British, South African. None of this. I don't have a dog in the fight. I know there's South Africans that listen, and they know a lot more about it. In fact, perhaps we should open the phones up. That's a pretty good idea at the start of the next hour before our guest comes on to have. In fact, we're going to do that from South Africa or Zimbabwe, or from people that are formerly from South Africa. Folks that left South Africa, whether they be black or white. If you were white, you pretty much had to leave because of the racial attacks. And you have it in other areas of Central Africa and other areas where the white farmers have all been run out and the society totally collapses. And you're seeing a lot of examples of that. So it's an incredibly complex, just incredibly complex issue. But you have to first understand that Nelson Mandela was born in the beginning of the last century, back in 1918, at the end of the of World War I. And he was set to basically become the king of a large area of South Africa. And when that failed and their imperial empire basically collapsed, he began working with the communists and then later with the Soviet Union through the 40s, 50s, and 60s to try to overthrow all of the countries in Southern Africa and install a Marxist-Leninist dictatorship. So you're replacing one tyranny with one. I got to say, there's pretty much nothing worse than a Marxist-Leninist or Stalinist state. Look at North Korea as a Stalinist state. I mean, there's nothing worse. Nothing worse. Okay, so my whole issue is they made it all this big cause celeb, and what you had is you had basically a bunch of rich Dutch people and French and British and others who were always fighting with each other. And the British elites basically came in, hyped up Hollywood, made a deal with the De Beers and the Oppenheimers, the owners of the diamond system, to come in and kick out some of the rich white people that were there and take it over. And then make things, I don't know, let's not exaggerate, 5 times worse for them. So they just traded one slavery for another, and that's what Nelson Mandela did. And we're going to explain it all. He didn't go with the commies. He went with James Baker and the Bushes, and that's the story of South Africa. We'll be right back to tell you all about it straight ahead. In understanding Nelson Mandela, you understand a key area of history, a nexus point that is South Africa, that has decided the destiny of the great continent of Africa, and hence the Middle East and the rest of the world into Central Asia, Eastern Europe, Western Europe. All of this is interconnected. And it's so frustrating to be doing research again to just double check my memory on South Africa and all the books and films and documentaries I've watched on the subject, to be looking at photos of British concentration camps. And if you go to Wikipedia, just type in Boer War or Encyclopedia Britannica, type in Boer War or Boer War, B-O-E-R, wars. So there's actually a bunch of them, 2 big ones, about 10 small ones. The British did what they'd done all over the world. They put tens of thousands of whites, just pointing out there's nothing to do with Africans at that time, folks actually from Africa, put them in concentration camps to starve them to death. And if the crew can do that, if you just type in Boer War and then go to Wikipedia and then scroll down to the photos at the bottom, you can see children being starved to death. Looks just like Nazi Germany with the Jews. Now, why do I intersperse this? Because you have to understand that Nelson Mandela's father, the king of one of the major tribes, actually sided with the British in this and then later flip sides. It's very complex. So the point is that Nelson Mandela couldn't be king of South Africa. I mean, no one ever says he was royalty. I just, again, the history they give, and you know how much I hate royalty, folks. I mean, it's nothing to do with him being black. I just really am disgusted by royalty. Now, he actually did some stuff on his own and had a lot of courage and was very smart. So I admire him from the perspective of being a very powerful individual. In fact, admire is not even the proper word. I respect him. I respect Adolf Hitler, even though I don't like Adolf Hitler. I respect Joseph Stalin or Mao Zedong. Now, I don't want to say that Mandela was a Hitler or a Mao. He doesn't come to that level. He's a more complex figure than that. I've really tried to figure out over the years, as I've done many people, who Nelson Mandela really was. But the point is, his wife is a would-be Hitler. That's why he probably divorced her, Winnie Mandela, who would personally torture people to death herself, mainly black folks, because it's mainly black folks down there. So everybody's fighting over resources. And so you've got the tribes constantly killing each other. And if you go back to the Boer War and you look at it, because that's where this all starts, fought from 1880 to 1902. So over 22 years, these different wars. The Boer Wars, literally freedom wars, were 2 wars fought by the British Empire against the Afrikaners of 2 independent Boer republics, the Orange Free State, and then it goes into the other republics. So that's all it was a big fight over stuff. And that's why elites always want to disarm people. Whether the Boers, whether the Afrikaners were good guys or not, whether the British Empire was the good guys, nobody was probably the good guys. The point here is it's all from your perspective, but that's why the British Empire wants their subjects disarmed, because then they don't have to fight you when they enslave you. And we can put on screen the tens of thousands of people in concentration camps, that's where Hitler got it, was from the British, who first used it in the Revolutionary War here in the United States when they were colonies. That was invented in America for use against whites. Then it was deployed against Indians, the reservation system after it. The British government, the British New World Order, invented this. Let's just get this straight. Now, the British government comes along in the 70s and hires, I'm oversimplifying this, Hollywood, to basically put movies out showing white people torturing and killing black people all day so that they could come into South Africa politically, unseat it, get Nelson Mandela out of prison, set him up to be the leader, 27 years in terrible conditions. He definitely turned. And then he basically sold out South Africa, and it's conservatively, depending on the numbers you see, 5 times worse than it was. Mass killing everywhere. Blacks murdering blacks in mass. And the media just totally covers it up. They've run off almost all the whites. The whites that live there live in these high-security compounds with other rich blacks in places like Johannesburg. Has one of the highest crime rates in the world because they've taken the citizens' guns. And it's total political correctness and basically a Soviet model of race war in slow motion of what they want to do in Europe and the United States. So the South African model by the Oppenheimers and by De Beers, their front company. I mean, it's the same thing. Cecil Rhodes and De Beers wanted to take over South Africa in 1880, so they came in when the diamonds got discovered and gold and all this. That's all this is. And someone who knows history, it's so frustrating to sit here and to watch this and to sit here and see this unfold and to know what's really going on and to know what Nelson Mandela did and how he used sports, quote, to get everybody to be racially friends. That's not what really happened. And it's just all a lie. And they just go, oh, my gosh, he's like Jesus. He's the greatest man who ever lived. And it's just like a total fraud. He's an African royal, and the globalists only deal with other royals. And they basically, he lost trying to team up with the Soviets. So they put him in jail for 27 years. And then he came over to their side. And all they did was kick out any middle class that was in South Africa and anybody that knew how the infrastructure was operated because they'd owned it and run it. And then the communists just came in and wrecked it, and now the diamond workers and everybody are even in worse shape, and they call it a civil rights movement to not let any African country mine their own diamonds and sell them so they get money. They call those blood diamonds, and it's the opposite. They actually keep everybody enslaved to keep the price of diamonds up by artificial scarcity. And the average person doesn't know that and have to watch all Bono and all these Hollywood people about, oh, don't buy diamonds unless they're certified by De Beers, which makes sure it's basically slave labor. It's like everything you're told is the opposite of what's really going on. And David, we'll have to get into the gun thing. This a lieutenant colonel at West Point saying we're going to take your guns, we're going to ban your guns, we're going to take them from your cold dead hand. That quote's now up on Infowars.com, that article, because we only got a few minutes before this other report to get into this. But I hired you because you're a smart engineer and you've studied history as well. It's addicting once you learn about it. You always want to learn more, but it's very painful to then run into people that just go, oh, you're just racist. You don't like Nelson Mandela. It's like this mindless feel-good thing like that Miss Teen USA that said, you know, what do we do to help American test scores? And she goes, such as South Africa, helping. I mean, it's literally, you don't know how to tie your shoelaces, but you know how to go, Mandela, Mandela, Mandela. And it's totally frustrating that they have no idea that they basically traded one set of masters who were actually reforming. They always use reform. Like Assad started reforming in Syria. They use that to bring in al-Qaeda to overthrow him. Same thing with Gaddafi. People say, well, why are you defending Gaddafi? Because he was much better than what they've done now, Al-Qaeda. Just like I'm not defending the white Afrikaners that had a racist system. I just knew that they actually were building things up and actually helping people compared to communists. I mean, that's what I'm saying is I don't want apartheid, but I don't want to live under Joseph Stalin either. I knew it was a globalist, commie, banker takeover, so that's why I would simply pointed out, hey, this is what's happening. And if the Africans knew that, and if the American people knew that, and if the cause celebs knew that, we could have actually reformed things, had real unity, and used South Africa in the south and Libya in the north, which is what Gaddafi wanted to do, to jack up Africa politically out of the mud and actually build it up. But the globalists don't want that. And I mean, it's like Coney 2012. Hadn't been seen in 7 years now. It was 6 years. We're going to invade Africa because this guy's a bad guy who's hiding in the jungle somewhere. He's actually dead. Now they're invading most of the countries, north, south, west, killing people with UN drones and saying it's to get Coney. And because they know the general public just goes, Coney, blow up all of Africa, nuke the whole continent, or you're for Coney. Well, then let South Africa be enslaved or you're against black people. You know, it's the same mindlessness, David Knight.
Well, you know, racism is a tactic, quite frankly, just like communism is a tactic, fascism is a tactic. And the elite always use this to oppress the people. What they do is they say, well, we've had fascism for a while, so now we're going to have communism, and you're going to be free. It's going to be completely different. Or we've had racism for a long time, so now we're going to have communism. The fact of the matter is that Mandela fought against racism, which was a good thing. But he did it with communism, which is just a different evil. And you got people that don't want to talk about this. I saw somebody write that now is not the time to talk about the history of this historical figure. Well, the reality is that they are talking about this historical figure. They're making him into a saint. And if you ignore both the warts as well as what he did well, then you're not going to really get an accurate picture of it. And once they make him into a saint, then nobody will be able to talk about him without being tagged as a racist. And as we see in this country, racism is a tactic for the ruling elite.
Well, they're racialist, exactly. It's a divide and conquer. The British Empire has written published books hundreds of years ago that are on record, how to do this. That's what they're doing. And then they'll use old wounds to keep the wounds open and engage in new wounds. We're going to air a special report here, and then we come back from break. We're going to get into this Army colonel who openly says he, quote, will get the guns out of our cold, dead hands. We're going to do that, but very eloquently said. That's why I love David Knight, folks. He could crystallize what I tried to say in 10 minutes down to just a little blurb. And then James Baker went over there when he got out of prison, was the first person to talk to him when he got out of prison. The first world leader was Secretary of State James Baker with that whole setup with the British Empire to literally betray Africa again. And they have betrayed South Africa. I want prosperity for South Africa, and it's undoubtedly many times worse than it was. You judge a tree by its fruits. And Mandela literally was just someone who was basically broken and programmed in prison. And people have to be honest about that and not let them create a saint so that he can't be questioned. Perfectly crystallized, David Knight. Now, here is a special report and also operational promotion to be able to stay on the air, folks, and keep expanding the operation. It's quite an issue to deal with something that helps everybody across the board, and that, of course, is Fluoride Shield. And so here is a piece that we put together on this new proprietary development that we put together with Dr. Group and Anthony Gucciardi, and it is simply amazing, just like the nascent iodine and also the Super Male Vitality we've come out with. InfoWarsLife.com, here it is. The facts are in. The studies are legion. Sodium fluoride and other members of the fluorine family that are added to Western water supplies are devastating the health and cognitive ability of the people that drink it. So the question is, why are the social engineers adding it to the water? Simple. Dumb down the host population that the parasitic technocracy is feeding on. Destroy our health, make us weak. Now, we're battling to get fluoride removed out of the water, and we've been successful in some cities in the US, Canada, England, and Germany. But in most areas, the poison is still being added. We can't get it out of the water supply yet, but we can get it out of our bodies. There is a way to fight back. The reason I have launched Infowars Life is because in my own research, trying to figure out how to detox my body and how to live a healthier life and how to take care of my children, I did more and more research on substances that are known on record to help block fluoride and other toxins, but also help strip them out and cleanse them from the body. And talking to medical doctors, scientists, researchers, nutritionists, different compounds continued to come up in their research separately to be the best at detoxing and cleansing the body. And for the first time ever, this product did not exist. I'm quite frankly shocked that nobody else developed it. We can now bring you Fluoride Shield, Fluoride Detox. But again, it doesn't just detox fluoride. The 6 substances in Fluoride Shield have been shown on record to battle and to cleanse and to strip out these known poisons that are wreaking havoc inside our bodies. We developed Fluoride Shield to be the highest quality, highest standards because I use it every day and my family uses it every single day. And the results that I have experienced have been dramatic. Let's take a closer look at the ingredients that make up this special proprietary formula. Tamarind has been celebrated for its ability to immobilize toxic fluoride residues, while zeolites have a long history of attracting and holding toxic compounds. Enter fulvic acid, an excellent cleansing agent that was included in the formula to displace fluoride from key areas of the body. Then we added the highest quality shilajit, a rare compound that is collected from the high mountains of the Himalayas and that has been used for thousands of years by Tibetans to cleanse the body. We topped it all off with the powerhouse herb cilantro that is intended to mobilize fluoride and other dangerous compounds for removal from the body. And the final touch to energize this formula is our proprietary nascent iodine. The ingredients in Fluoride Shield were carefully selected from thousands upon thousands of herbs, minerals, and nutrients. Whatever you do, it's imperative to go to InfoWarsLife.com and read our entire informational write-up on Fluoride Shield. Because these compounds don't just strip the body of unwanted fluoride. It targets mercury and a whole other list. And the documentation is at InfoWarsLife.com. And as always, consult your physician as well because that is important. And finally, Fluoride Shield, Survival Shield, and all the products at InfoWarsLife.com grew out of my quest to try to find the very best compounds from God's cornucopia to protect myself and my family. And from our research, I believe we are bringing you the best, highest quality products. And you have that commitment from Alex Jones and the entire Infowars crew. Because these products are also helping fund our First Amendment operation, the radio, the TV, the magazine, the films that reach tens of millions of people a week. We're not funded by the globalists. We don't get taxpayer money like NPR or MSNBC with stimulus money. We are funded by our sponsors and our listeners who support us. So from the bottom of my heart to all of the Infowars family, thank you for your support and your continued support. Because of your support, we have been able to change history together. All right, folks, we are back live. We're going to break in 1 minute, and we're going to come back and break down this traitorous Army colonel at West Point teaching the new officer corps that the Second Amendment does not exist and that our guns will be taken. And the rest of the West Point training, it's in Forbes and Washington Times and Associated Press. They're training to confiscate our guns. One more thought on Nelson Mandela. This is what frustrates me so much. You got 4 big tribes and dozens of other little tribes all killing each other constantly. If you're not part of that tribe, they literally will kill you. Now, Mandela tried to unify that, and that was a positive thing. But it's the same thing. That's what, it's not even racism, it's tribalism. Just like the whites wouldn't let you in their club if you weren't Dutch, or then you had French that were only in their club that were white. This is tribalism, and under political correctness, they're not trying to get rid of it. They're trying to stir it up, is what I'm getting at. Folks, Folks, one last little piece of history about Nelson Mandela in South Africa. One reason I've read so many books about it is it's so entertaining. I mean, it's like reading histories of the West. It was like America, and that all these poor people from all over the world, including India, including the Middle East, not just Anglos, other Africans would try to get there and get off ships at the Horn of Africa or down there in southern Africa. I forget I guess they call it the Cape. And the point is, the Horn's up in Somalia, the Cape. I'm again going through all this history just from background, but yes, the Cape of Good Hope and Cape Town. And then you had the British basically able to grab the south, the central, and the far eastern piece, but then there were only two little pieces that were kept by the Dutch, the French, and others. And again, they all hated each other even more than the blacks, because that tribally was their tribal warfare. And then you had the blacks all hating each other even more than the whites. And it's just so frustrating. It's all the exact same type of human behavior, tribalism. And tribalism is why Africa has always had so many problems, is because they always engage in tribal warfare. Well, every other culture's done that as well. And then that's the argument for empire. It comes in and stops the tribalism. The problem is these empires then keep tribalism going to keep everyone under control with the empire. And then this is a predatory New World Order empire that wants us all disarmed, all disowned of property, all disowned of rights. So the New World Order is a new corporate colonialism that is anti-free market, anti-individual, and is colonizing the mind. Now, I'm done. I'm done talking about it. It's just that I'm just thinking about how insane South Africa has been. I mean, the wars there make anything in the U.S. look like a joke, folks. And I want to talk to folks who are Dutch Afrikaners, French Afrikaners, Black Afrikaners, Zulus. If you're part of Mandela's tribe, I'm not attacking you because I'm not worshiping Mandela. I mean, it's just so frustrating, all this tribal warfare stuff, where I point out the West brought in Muslims to attack the Serbs. The Serbs fought back. They called it ethnic cleansing. And then the West came in and bombed the country and gave Albania a third of Serbia. I'm not Albanian. I'm not Serb. I just know the New World Order is going in and destroying nation states, and that's why I'm frustrated. And let's finish up with South Africa. We'll get into this traitorous professor later in the next hour, because I think we've run out of time here, David Knight. But other points on what I just said.
Well, you're absolutely right, Alex. And we've got tribes here in the U.S. We've got a tribe of Republicans and Democrats. It's one of the reasons why the founders opposed partisan politics, because they knew that it would be used to divide and to conquer.
They said it would cause tribalism.
Absolutely. And so what's important is about the individual, and it's about individual rights. And that's essentially what's going on with this debate that got drug up again by this West Point instructor, former West Point instructor. He's taking a collectivist, statist view of the Second Amendment. Not that it's about individual rights, not that it's about establishing the right of the people to keep and bear arms.
No,
for him,
right of the state, which is the super elite royal tribe.
Exactly.
And their ideas are what we must adopt in collectivism. That's slavery.
Exactly. So everything is about divide and conquer. Everything is about breaking us into competing groups. Sports reinforce that. You're talking about the boycotting of the NFL. I mean, team sports are really about getting people back into this tribalistic mindset. And they can easily then transfer that into the political realm, because people are much more interested in watching a sports pageant. But once you get into this them versus us type of mentality, it's very easy to do that. That's what we saw happening there. And as I pointed out before, communism does not mitigate racism. You know, it's not a way to substitute one for the other. It's just a different kind of control technique.
Well, and then they use getting rid of racism as a way to reaffirm the differences and then selectively enforce it. But it's just like the Ford versus Chevy, where it shows the little character urinating on the symbol. People get in fights over, I like Ford, I like Chevy, I like Dodge. It's they have no culture. And it's like Cowboys versus the 49ers. It's just it's a fake culture. And notice the globalists attack anything that's a real culture, folks. Don't give up your culture, no matter what it is. Be proud of it and be proud of other cultures as well. But don't give up your culture and turn against any plastic culture.
Alex Jones.
With the death of Nelson Mandela, we've been discussing tribalism, which is how humans have organized themselves for all of our history, which works fine if you're a band of people out in the middle of nowhere and share kinship, and there's another group that wants to, basically take your hunting lands from you. That's how you operate. But the globalists, the empires, going back to Rome and before, they scientifically studied tribes and how to manipulate them. And I have read, no exaggeration, let's not exaggerate, I don't know, 30, 40, probably more, books by the British Empire, published for the British Empire, published by the Roman Empire, published by anthropology, sociology textbooks. And that's really what the elite are into, is how they manipulate you. And their culture is really eugenics, ultra-slavery, hatred of humanity, mega-authoritarians. And how do you explain that to somebody that's been raised on NFL tribalism, or Ford versus Chevy, or Coke versus Pepsi? I mean, you see how they do this everywhere. And then it turns out Coke and Pepsi are basically interlocking corporations, the same people. It's like England has 2 big grocery store chains. And it turns out they're owned by the same people. It's just, we're literally under a colonization of the mind. I want to free people's mind because I think everybody's beautiful and great and has interesting attributes. The problem is once someone's bought into collectivism and has been programmed by tribalism, it doesn't matter if you individually don't hate them. They hate you because of your color. And even if you try to talk them out of it, they think they have power over you now in political correctness. If you're one of the chosen bad groups, just reverse racism, I'm the bad white person. And then there's no way to deprogram most of those folks because the social engineers have done this for so long. This is their identity. Their culture is being racially upset with the social race pimps, the race hustlers, reaffirming on top and manipulating the entire program. And when you look at tribalism, I've realized more and more, we have to act like sports teams. We have to put our ideas out very simply and then connect them to the more complex ideas to counter folks that are like zombies. And that's what I've said. We need to have our own gangs. People go, what, like Crips and Bloods? No, 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 no. Or the Ku Klux Klan? No, 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 no. I'm saying Second Amendment, property rights, liberty, free market. That's why the establishment, the left today, attacks the movie Scarface so much, because it backfired on them. Because you've got this entrepreneur character, even though he's a bad guy, he's a good guy at the end, doesn't kill kids, makes the right decision at the end. And he says, I like everybody but a communist. That's slavery. You want somebody telling you what to eat, what to sleep, what to do? You want to not have enough food to eat? You want a rat on every corner telling you what to do? We have to literally fight this communist collectivism with our own tribalism of forget what color you are. It's what Martin Luther King actually said. Even though the left tried to control him and communist, he was getting away from them. That's why they killed him, because he was getting off the whole left-right reservation. Judge someone by the content of their deeds and their heart and how they act and what they do. You judge a tree by its fruits. Not what they say on the surface, but what do they actually do? And Nelson Mandela was only a puppet and a front man, though he was a very interesting, smart guy. I'm not saying that he was an interesting guy and a manly man, you know, big warlord king of the whole area of Africa. Notice the media never says that. Like, he just came from nowhere, a nice person over here, and everyone grovels to him in fear because of, you know, whatever. When you really get down to the end of the day, he totally, to get out of prison, I don't know, 27 years in solitary confinement, I say I won't sell out, but I don't know. The point is he came out and totally sold everybody out. And that's why all the CFR, New World Order people are worshiping him. So I want to get calls from South Africa, 800-259-9231, 800-259-9231. Or if you lived in South Africa and left, black, white, French, Dutch, British, I don't care. I want to hear from you, 800-259-9231. Stay with us. Nelson Mandela, at 95 years of age, died. And we covered in the last hour what really happened in South Africa, how the British government wanted to break down the country to replace one form of tyranny with another. But we've already covered that. We're going to cover it more. I'd like to hear specifically from people in South Africa, or if you live in Australia, the United States, Europe, if you've left South Africa, if you're a black South African, white South African, French South African, because they're all in different groups, Dutch South African, mixed South African, whatever. What is your take on how South Africa is now, 20 years after Mandela? because it's been about 20 years since he was in there as president. What is your take on the divide and conquer that's now taking place and how they use that opportunity for unity, I believe for division, but you know more about it than I do. The toll-free number to join us is 800-259-9231. You got to dial your country code and call in on that or use your IP phone to do that. It's 800-259-9231. I know there's a direct line folks can call as well. And John Harmon up there on the network, you want to come on air and tell folks that number, because I should have had that, but I'm on the road today.
Sure, that number is the international number would be 00 and then 1 and then 651-695-7755. Those are for international callers.
And you're on air right now, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good, because I'm in East Texas from a funeral. They're in Austin at the Infowars News Center, and then you're in Minnesota. And thank you very much, John Harmon. And again, give that number out one more time.
That's 001-651-695-7755.
All right, we should get John Harmon on air more often. So please call in. We'd like to hear from you, whether you're an expatriate or whether you're visiting the United States or whether you're listening on the internet. I know we get calls routinely from South Africa. I know it's caused quite a stir when I've been on South African radio shows. And they've actually had the government try to tell them not to have me back on anymore. I mean, that's the type of tyranny now that's going on there. So they've replaced one form of oppression with another. And it's statistically much worse, as folks said it would be. See, you're like, what are you, for apartheid? No. I'm saying the globalists are even more evil than this on record. And they are going to want to totally oppress everybody and social engineer them. It's like the Borg versus, you know, some good old boys who actually want prosperity. And again, we need tribalism of liberty, not tribalism of race or even religion, because, you know, we got a black fella from Georgia coming on who had a gun at his own business, and people complained. So the cops said, well, why don't you get a concealed carry? So he got that, and they came and arrested him and haven't given him his gun back or any of it, and a bunch of other stuff. And see, I'm as offended if it was a black person, a white person, or whatever. In fact, I never even, when I first heard about it on the radio, I didn't think, is it a black person, is it a white person? I just thought of somebody having their rights violated. It's like that lady, that black lady that got scared at the checkpoint, and so they chased her down and killed her. I immediately came on and said, this is the tyranny of Washington and the paranoia of terrorism and this police state. And I literally saw YouTube comments, and I showed them on air, and comments on Infowars saying she was driving a nice car. You're just mad that some white lady got killed. Because that was right during the Trayvon Martin thing, or at the end of it. People were so racially charged up. And then when it turned out she was a black lady, I had such an outpouring of liberal blacks then loving me, like I defended a black lady. I didn't even think, what color is this woman? They just killed some woman in front of her kid who was unarmed. I just don't get it. I mean, you bleed red, I'm for you. And it's so frustrating to see the people. Anyways, I'm ranting. 800-259-9231. We want to hear from folks with their take on South Africa. If you live there, or even if you visited, or if you're a historian, your take on it. I see a lot of callers coming in, Jim in Texas and others who lived in South Africa. But we've got some other news we've got to hit on two different fronts. And DrudgeReport.com has a red link to our article about thumb scanning in these prison tunnels that lock you in at the airport. Those are going into more airports. That's an incredible story we've got to cover. But this West Point traitor, this globalist operative in Esquire saying, you know, the military will get our guns, break down this information.
Well, you know, Alex, what he was writing his essay in Esquire essentially about was a 2010 Supreme Court decision, Heller versus D.C. Now, that was a Supreme Court decision that established, as according to a 5-4 decision, that the Second Amendment is about an individual right. And, of course, that's really the crux of the debate. People on the authoritarian left have tried to portray this as something that is a right that belongs to government. And that's the tack that this guy, who was a West Point history instructor, that's the tack that he's taking throughout his entire article. He says, my job at the end of the day is about killing, and I orchestrate violence, but my profession is about directed violence on behalf of the nation. But see, the way that he defines the nation is the federal government, not the individual people. And to say that the Bill of Rights, especially the Second Amendment is about establishing powers for the government is just amazingly an amazing lie, because the entire 10 Bill of Rights was about individual rights, and then they summed it up with the 10th Amendment and said, oh, no, by the way, if we haven't given anything specifically to the government, it's still reserved to the people and to the individual states.
And by the way, the Violence Policy Center 13 years ago, in the front page of the Dallas, the Austin American Statesman, whenever we caught bribery at the Capitol, they literally in the paper quoted the head of the Violence Policy Center, and he said, it doesn't matter what Mr. Jones does. He's going to die, and with him, his Second Amendment. We've got your kids in the schools. And then here's this West Point professor. She's in the article, because I see it on Infowars.com, saying, doesn't matter. We're going to get your guns anyways. But for sure, when you die. And so it is about killing a culture. And it's so sick that this guy shows Marxist training when they say, we've got your kids. And I can't believe we just turn our kids over to these people. Go ahead.
That's right. And, of course, at West Point, he taught history because he's about shaping the worldview. That's why he believes that he can take the guns from your cold, dead hand. He says he hopes that he doesn't have to kill you. Of course, he will if he has to. He'll tell his
and
has to, but he thinks
it's worse.
Inherit it. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's worse. It's worse. The scandal is, why are they putting these people in everywhere?
Yes.
You know, it just came out 2 weeks ago that the person teaching history and law and a bunch of other stuff at another West Point type installation, one of the biggest in the country, Texas A&M. And it's not just this one professor. The bunch of them are doing it. They're bringing him in and literally saying, we're going to take your guns. And she said the rest of the Bill of Rights, free speech, everything.
That's right. Well, and of course, this guy is writing for Esquire. He's also written for the Small Wars Journal. And if you remember back to the summer of 2012, there was a lot said about an article that they had called Full Spectrum Operations in the Homeland, A Vision of the Future. Do you remember that? Where they were saying,
yes, when they said they're preparing for war with the Tea Party.
That's right. The Tea Party was taking over after hard times and a bad economy. They had taken over one town. And so this was their gaming scenario, how they were going to fight the Tea Party people who had taken over Darlington, South Carolina. Now, he didn't write that particular article, but he writes many, many articles for the Small Wars Journal. He's also...
But see, that's even more important. That's even more important. Again, it's infested. It's not this one guy. It's most of them. I mean, I'll turn on C-SPAN and see an Army War College briefing for generals. And I mean, it sounds like the most it sounds like a science fiction movie of the bad guys.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, so this is very relevant because you remember when we were down in San Antonio and you and Anthony Gucciardi were talking to the police chief because we had this open carry rally down there at the Alamo. And and you asked him, he's a, you know, point blank, you and Anthony were asking him, would you confiscate guns if you were ordered to do so? And he said, well, that's a hypothetical.
Just dropped.
See, they have hypothetical scenarios. That's exactly what they train in all the time is hypothetical scenarios. That's what the Small Wars Journal is about. It was about a hypothetical scenario where they could have the operation in the homeland, their vision of the future where they're fighting Tea Party people to confiscate their guns. So to say that I can't tell you whether I would confiscate your guns or not because that's a hypothetical scenario. Everything that they train with is hypothetical. And they are creating scenarios where the federal government, where the military is going against individual citizens because, as this fellow points out, he doesn't see it as an individual right. He sees it as...
Absolutely.
Right. It's all about continuity of government. It's not about individual liberty.
All right. We're going to go to phone calls now. Again, I'm hosting the broadcast. David Knight is popping in with expert analysis and breaking news. We'll have to get to the other news on Japan and warnings there that they're going under a fascist coup. Congress is having hearings on Obama being a dictator. The presidency is now a dictatorship by every measurement. We're going to go to that, but we have calls from Switzerland. We have calls from Texas. Both people lived in South Africa, so I'm going to skip this network break. I'm skipping this network break so that we have time to get to these callers and then also have David shift gears and get into other news. But if you hear me jumping in and getting upset, hearing all these West Point commanders teaching war with the Tea Party, we're going to take your guns, we're going to kill you. He actually says, we're going to take it from your hand. I mean, this is absolute sedition, absolute enemy infiltration. And Americans love to follow authority so much, they're going to try to have a Boer war here, folks. I'm telling you. They are going to come after the gun owners. And by the way, all you idiots that are going to side with them, you're going to be slaves when they're done, you idiots. excuse me, I'm getting angry here, folks. I can't believe that our own military leadership is openly teaching treason and sedition and overthrow. They are criminal infiltrators, according to the Bill of Rights and Constitution. They have broken their oaths. They are involved in sedition. Thank you, David Knight. Let's talk to and chime in anytime you want on these gentlemen. Jim in Texas, lived in South Africa. Then we'll talk to Swiss Mountain in Switzerland. Thank you for holding. Jim, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex. From the time I was born until I was 12 years old, I lived in Rhodesia in Victoria Falls from 68 until 80, until the government fell. And from that point on, I lived 5 years in Cape Town, South Africa. Now, as a young boy... Sir,
do me a favor. Back off your phone a little bit. It's overdriven. For those that don't know, Rhodesia was when the British captured the north area of South Africa, the northeast. They named it after their Illuminati chieftain who openly called for world government and who set up the Rhodes Scholarship. So you were born in Rhodesia. Go ahead.
Yes, that's correct. My father was in the Rhodesian Army. In fact, he was a captain in one of the companies in the Rhodesian African Rifles, which was a black and white unit, mixed battalions. Growing up, there was no racial strife whatsoever in Rhodesia. The Hosas and the Dabalis were the major black tribes. We lived in neighborhoods. I had black neighbors. I had, you call them colored. They were the ones that, maybe had a white parent. There was interracial. There was no problem. No racial strife whatsoever until the ZANLA, Zimbabwean African National People's Liberation Army, communists who are Chinese-backed, began their insurgency from Zambia. Now, why is this important? Because Nelson Mandela was a ZANLA operative. They were the ones who set him up. Winnie Mandela and her little soccer boys, that they call them, were a bunch of little terrorists that would go around killing members of the Zulus and the Dabalis in South Africa that did not support their communist attitudes. Now, after Rhodesia fell in 1980, my family, my father and my mother and my brothers and sisters and I moved to Cape Town, which is the English-speaking area, the British versus the Dutch area of South Africa, and my father became a policeman. What Mandela and his ilk would do is terrorize. They were cowards, Alex. They wouldn't attack the policemen in the police stations. They would kidnap and torture and terrorize the family members of the policemen. And when I hear people exclaiming how wonderful Nelson, especially that evil woman, Winnie Mandela, when they are singing their praises, they wouldn't feel the same way if they would have had a family member, usually innocent children, coming home from the private schools that we were forced to go to. They would kidnap the children of police officers and set them on fire. These are 5- and 6-year-old little children that Winnie Mandela and Nelson Mandela and the other ZANLA terrorists used to torture and kill.
And by the way, you point that out. I mean, of course he was part of that group. He was to be the king of that particular tribe. And notice they never even point that out. And that, again, they went around murdering other tribes of blacks that didn't want to be communist. You're absolutely right. That's mainline history. You lived it. And it's just crazy to sit there and see none of that on the news, and they are sanctifying him like he is the Saint Mary or something. I mean, I have never seen anything like it. What is it like for you living in the United States now? I guess you're a U.S. citizen now. It sounds like it. I can't even, hear your South African accent. What is it like to see people who I guarantee you can't even find South Africa on a map? I guarantee I would argue with you and call you a racist if you didn't literally put a tire around your child's head and burn that white devil for Mandela. Will you not kill your children now, sir, to show you're not racist?
There you go. Absolutely. And you can look at the Zulu tribes, which were very anti-Mandela. The Zulus were criticized for being part of the apartheid government, when in fact they were just very decent people. The Zulus never have been terrorists. The Zulus never have had any allegations of murdering white children or black children or anything. The Zulus are they have a very strong political...
they had a warrior code. They had a warrior, like a chivalry, like knights.
Exactly, and the Zulus did not care for any of the communists at all, and even the Zulu chiefs would denounce Mandela publicly, because of the methods he would use to try and end apartheid. All apartheid was, is, as you correctly stated, Alex, was the white tribe trying to maintain itself against the other black tribes. The blacks in South Africa, even to this day, are very tribal, and then they would criticize the whites, which are referred to as Europeans in Africa. White Africans are referred to as Europeans, even though I've never been to Europe. For us, for being tribal ourselves, we would be criticized while they would maintain their tribalism. So the Zulus were good. The communists, the Baileys and Hosas were not very good. They were terrorists. They were murderers. They were insurgents backed by the communist Chinese. And Nelson Mandela, now that he's dead, I hope he rots in hell and suffers pain for eternity for what he and Winnie Mandela did to innocent people.
All right, well, that's from somebody that lived it, and I'd love to hear from any, other South Africans, black South Africans. I don't care. All I know is I've studied it, and yeah, the Russians, the Chinese, on record, would go into African countries where there were basically no whites north of there, and would just kill everybody. I mean, it's like, well, when the Soviets kill Africans, it's loving and cutesy cute. And it's just, now look at South Africa, folks. It is a hell hole of communism now. But our media, you'd never know it. You would never know what South Africa's like now, because the foreign banks came in, the British Empire came in, they finally conquered it with political correctness. And I just wish that everybody would have worked together. I know they tried to with the Zulus to actually get real liberty and try to unify. But then once Mandela, he unified them around communism with sports. And then this soccer team or the rugby team went and met with him, and it was a white team, and then, they're all friends now. That was just for outside consumption, from what I've read. Let's talk to Swiss Mountain, who lived in South Africa. What is your take on all this and what the last caller said, Swiss Mountain?
Hi, Alex. It's nice to talk to you. Well, I think the previous caller romanticizes the Zulu nation a bit, even though I did vote for the Inkatha Freedom Party in the 94 elections. But, I mean, that election in itself is completely rigged. I just wanted to sort of mention a lesser-known point that P.W. Botha, before he went out, he was actually starting to move South Africa towards a system of the cantons, as we have it in Switzerland, or as you have the states in America. And I think that's one of the reasons why they took him out so quickly, why F.W. de Klerk just completely usurped the National Party back then, and started working with Mandela to bring in the coalition government, which eventually led to ANC rule.
And again, for those that don't know, the average American literally can't even, I'm sorry, the average government-trained American cannot find their feet with both hands or their butt either. But for folks that don't know, you have the Inkatha group connected to the Zulus, and then you have the ANC, of course, with Mandela and the communists and the rest of them. Give us your take on living there and why you left and what you'd like to say to folks calling from Switzerland.
Well, I mean, we left. I left because it just got to the point where I wasn't safe anymore. And your gun rights were virtually zero. So for me to get a gun to protect myself was not the way to go. So I just decided, okay, I'll leave, thanks. The other reason why I left was because there was so much killing, and I'm not just talking killing where they go and they shoot somebody. They torture people. They torture people in the most horrendous, psychopathic ways before they finally let them die. There's an extermination happening in South Africa of white farmers. I don't know where these people are going to get their food from. They're most probably going to get genetically manipulated food from the UN. But it was just psychologically so horrendous to live there. I just had to leave.
And of course, other areas of Africa, they have exterminated all the whites, actually exterminated the few farmers that stayed behind, and are now collapsing, like Zimbabwe. And again, the average American hears the word Zimbabwe and just thinks it's a foreign planet. What do you want to tell Americans that naively think that communism in Africa is a wonderful thing?
I want to tell them to read history, and read lots of it. And the only thing I can say to the American listeners is there's so much love and support for you from all around the world. We're all in this together. I think Thomas Paine even said we're all Americans in this cause of liberty. And we've just got to keep on educating people. We've got to interject small pieces of information to those that are entirely numb and try to tune in on their level to raise them up even the slightest little bit. And apart from that, I'm so impressed with people running for local government in America. That's the way to take it back. Apartheid South Africa was the worst. If you were a black living under the apartheid regime, that's what you guys are fighting against right now. It was horrendous for the black people as well, because I grew up with them.
Well, I want to hear how bad apartheid was when we come back. We've got another guest coming on, but I want to give you 2 minutes to finish up, ma'am, and we'll be getting the guest on. But I want you to give that perspective as well. Please stay there. Don't hang up.
I'm David Knight. I'm here in Austin, and Alex is doing the show live remote. It's amazing how we can get technology to do that. I'm here just in case we have some problems, and we had a momentary problem, so that's why I came in. But now we're
all right. I'm back here. I'm right here with you, David. Thank you so much. And we've got a special guest coming up that the guys lined up from WSB TV. First reported businessman arrested for loitering, carrying legal gun on his own property in Atlanta, Georgia, or outside Atlanta. The good Californians, I guess, that have moved into the area, if they see anyone with a gun, they call the police, and the police say, look, doesn't matter if your gun's legal or not, we're going to take it because the Californians don't like seeing it. And that's an oversimplification. I love a lot of Californians. I love the state of California. It's very beautiful. But a lot of my problems, everybody I know who lives on a ranch has had their California neighbors, because that's who's moved to Austin, to the Texas Hill Country, call the police on them when they shoot their guns even a mile away. And it's a reign of terror. And that's basically what happened to this gentleman. We're getting him on the line. Going to talk to him in a second. But a lady going by the name Swiss Mountain. I wanted to hear from South Africans, black South Africans, white South Africans, human beings who've lived in South Africa in the hellish stuff that's gone on there, and get your real perspective on Nelson Mandela. And we were about to go to break, but she was talking about how bad apartheid was as well, to give that perspective. So living there and watching apartheid, you were trying to make a point. Swiss Mountain calling from Switzerland. Go ahead and finish up.
Yeah, well, I mean, the amazing thing for white South Africans was that you had help in the house that were black. Women that worked in the kitchen, for example. And I grew up with these people and with their children. And under apartheid, their children were not allowed to be with them. They had to go back to the townships. And my mother was against this. And we had several visits from the police where she just didn't allow them inside. So then you had your pass laws where black people had to carry their papers on them at all times and could be searched anywhere. It really wasn't a nice system to be under if you were in the wrong skin color category. So I can understand why people like Nelson Mandela got really, really annoyed at this. I don't agree with his methods in the least, nor do I agree with Umkhonto we Sizwe or any of those organizations that they started up. I mean, they also had their fair share of child soldiers and misery that they spread. But the fact of the matter is you can't really have a libertarian system there, because every single African tribe in South Africa has a hierarchy that's based on monarchy. So they know nothing else. And it's going to take a hell of a long time for them to start grasping individual rights and life beyond a chieftainship that has a monarchy above it.
Well, that's what I was pointing out, is that they basically broke Mandela regardless. In 27 years in prison, he was going to be the king of one of the major tribes. The media never points out that he's royalty. I mean, over large areas. This is not like some local chief. It was like actual royalty, and very brutal. And then they bring him in, and then he claims there's all this unity. It's just absolutely trading out one group of controllers for another. And from all the South Africans I've talked to, black, white, doesn't matter, they say South Africa has gotten innumerably worse. Has that been your experience, or is that not true?
Absolutely. It's gone from bad to worse. If you ask black people today, they say, please bring back apartheid, because it was just so much better for us.
So even though it was horrible, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, everybody says they had work, they had livelihood. it was just, that's the great big irony of it, is because now you've got the system of the ANC in power that is so oligarchic in their own right. Of course, they're coupled with the New World Order, make no mistake. There's a lot of little minions there in the ANC government that have a business with a higher agenda. For example, chipping babies. They want to start chipping babies in hospitals in Johannesburg, I think. They want to put e-tags on your car if you want to drive on the highway. All of these
Amazing.
things.
Well, we're going to have to open the phones up again when I get back to Austin soon, and open the phones up for folks to call in from South Africa and also other regions, because the great thing is we have so many listeners around the world. We can get a real perspective from people. So God bless you, Swiss Mountain, for calling in. And that's what I love about our listeners. These are real thinkers. It's not Mandela good or Mandela bad. It's not. No. It's much deeper of like what's really going on, what's really happening, because the West didn't go in and get rid of apartheid to help South Africa. They went in so they could absolutely strip any laws out and make everybody slaves. And that's my point is take and then we're going to our guest. Take what just happened in Ukraine. Ukraine voted to not enter the European Union, even though they'd wanted to for a decade. And the EU was ready to bring them in because they've seen that the EU is actually there to loot countries and literally steal everybody's pension funds, which they've done in Greece and Spain and Portugal and everywhere else, because the documents came out. That's what it was set up for. So then they're like, oh, you're run by Russia now. Well, no, I don't think Ukraine should be under Russia or it should be under the EU. It should be under the people of Ukraine. It's the same deal. They did not go with the EU because they love Russia. The Ukrainians hate the Russians. They used them pretty much as slaves and killed 10 million of them and all the rest of them. That's white people killing white people. Man, it's the same story over and over again, just different skin color. And they'll use an excuse. Well, you're a Ukrainian, so I can kill you. I mean, it's just like they'll have Christians, get killed by Muslims in Africa or whatever. Just it's the same people, same genetics. They just or one group's animus, one group's Christians. They kill each other. We need to have a culture of liberty, regardless of what color we are, of human liberty, and then that's our gang. Because we do want to be in tribes. Well, I'm in the tribe of liberty, and I don't care what color you are. If you are having your rights violated, I'm going to come to your aid because I want people to come to my aid. I mean, where's the special interest for the individual? Where's the special interest for families? Where's the special interest for business owners? Where is it? I want real unity around liberty. And it's the only future we have, folks. And that's why they attack the Bible so much, because it's all in there if we'd follow it. People say, well, the religion's done all this. That's people twisting it. All right, I'm done ranting, and I appreciate him joining us. Now, I know we have another guest coming up, Pastor Manning, in the next hour. CJ, you told me my guest already. Is it guest or guest? Okay.
Yes. Pastor Manning is coming on.
Okay. So it's Eric Lee and his lawyer, and then Manning's coming on. Good. Okay, well, let me introduce them both. Eric Lee, of course, businessman arrested for loitering, carrying legal gun on his own property. He'd been harassed over being a gun owner. This is happening to us in Texas as well, folks. Your neighbor doesn't like you having guns, the police come. And he was arrested. His gun's taken. He hasn't gotten them back. This is an incredible story. So, David Knight, you please introduce his lawyer and him here on air, and then I've got some questions, but I'm on the road here. Go ahead. Mr. Lee, tell us who your lawyer is.
Shannon Briley.
Okay, well, fantastic. Who would like to speak first? Tell us what happened to you.
Oh, I'll start it. I was working, and I got off work, and on my way to the car, I figured I left my gun. So I had to run back in the store and get my gun. And there were some guys outside, just local guys that I know. And they was asking me questions, wanted to talk to me. And so I talked to them for a second before I got in my truck and the police pulled up. And they said, what's going on out here? They had a car probably across the street or something. They seen us outside. And they said, you have any drugs, any weapons? And I said, I have a gun on me, but it's my store gun. As soon as I said I had a gun, they just handcuffed me and threw me in the back of the car. And I said, if you would let me finish, I would have put I could show you my license in my back pocket. So he didn't take the cuffs off. They left me cuffed, and he went into my back pocket and pulled out my license and ran it. And one of the cops, they were betting on me. One of them said, I guarantee you, I bet you the gun's stolen. And so the other guy ran my license. He said, well, it's not stolen. And he said he cursed and said, damn. And I said to the officer, I said, are you serious? Are you mad because I'm doing the right thing out here? And he just told me to be quiet, and he walked off. And so the other officer, I said, just do the right thing, man. What's gonna happen? He said, well, I can't do nothing right now. I gotta wait for my sergeant to come. And so his sergeant finally came with probably like 6 more police officers, and they told me they came. My gun was registered, but it came up as a different caliber gun, but my numbers matched. And I said, well, I didn't put the thing in the system. I got all my records right here. And he said, well, we can't figure it out, so just take him to jail and we'll let the courts figure it out. And that's what happened.
And I want to get into what else happened to you and not getting the guns back. But here's the deal, and I know the Georgia laws as well. And I know we have your lawyer, Shannon Briley, who I'm very excited to know that we were able to get on. The guys that sent me the list, I'd overlooked it, so I apologize for that. But my issue here is this a case of having self-defense while being black, like driving while black or standing at a bus stop while black? Or is this a case of owning a gun and not being part of the government? And because I see this happen to everybody, but I guess particularly black folks aren't allowed to defend themselves. I know in Chicago and D.C. it seems to be cities with a lot of black folks where they deny people the Second Amendment, so only the criminals have it. My issue is you could have had a gun anyways as a business owner on your own property or in your car under Georgia law. It's just like Texas law. They are now arresting people in Texas and other areas who will have a rifle on the back of your truck that's totally legal. They just say, well, I'm going to go ahead and take you in anyways. And then, as Ammo Land reported, you have to spend more on lawyers to get your gun back than what it's worth. And so this is really a criminal authoritarian action. So tell folks what else happened once you went to jail. Your lawyer, Shannon Briley, jump in any time to tell us where this is going. But, I mean, this is basically a kidnapping. It's official oppression. But because the police are doing it, I guess it's okay according to them.
And then what happened next was they went in and took me to jail. They towed my car, and I had to bond out of jail and then pay money to get my car back out. And that's about it on that. And then I had to call. I went to court, and the judge and everybody apologized and said I shouldn't be here. They're sorry that I had to go through that, and they just dropped all the charges. And they said I would talk to somebody if I was you.
Have they given your gun back yet?
No, sir. They gave me the runaround when I went to, I got my papers from the court to go get my gun. And I took it to the place they told me to take it to. And they gave me, they said I got to get in contact with that officer. So I called the officer's headquarters, and they kept giving me the runaround. They gave me about 6 different precincts to check. They said, go here, he's not here, try this precinct, try this precinct. So I got in my car and I rode and I took pictures of all the precincts I went to. Then I called so much that the dispatch, they would tell me that, your best option is to just drive up. He gets here at, like they said, like 9 o'clock. He gets here at 9 and just pull up and jump out on him. That's your best way to catch him. I said, okay.
Now, I mean, I think you're alluding to that. Do you think somebody tattled on you for exercising the right to have a firearm for your own business? Because I see that it's an unclaimed freight and a grocery store, furniture. I mean, it's the type of place that would get robbed. I mean, if a business owner can't have a gun, I mean, I guarantee you, if I ran a convenience store or a store like yours, especially outside Atlanta, I mean, I guarantee you I'd be packing.
Yeah.
What's so egregious about this is that the response time, the average response time for officers in this area is well over an hour, particularly during shift changes and late at the evening or early in the afternoon. So if he was put into a situation wherein he had to defend himself or his family that owns the business, he wouldn't be able to do so without a firearm. This is an area that have repeated robberies, and law enforcement had initially suggested to him to get a firearm to keep the location. And, what's so egregious about this incident with DeKalb County is that this wasn't just the actions of one rogue officer. This incident was co-signed by a supervisor on every level, initially by his immediate supervisor, then by the DeKalb County Board of Commissioners. Mr. Lee filing a lawsuit was a last resort. He didn't just jump into this. We sent a letter to DeKalb County Internal Affairs informing them what happened. We sent a letter to the DeKalb County Board of Commissioners informing them what happened. And nothing, we have gotten no response. It's been well over a year. So
well, that's right. I mean, I should have pointed out. This is systemic. I should have pointed out this is a year ago. You're suing. Of course, I missed making the big point. Thank you so much for bringing it up, Shannon Briley, the lawyer for Mr. Lee. And when Mr. Lee's rights are violated, all of our rights are violated. And obviously, mid-level police that are smart say, get a gun, you're having a lot of crime problems. But then higher up, the politicos want to persecute gun owners. And they have persecuted his human rights, his civil rights. This is a big violation. Where do you go from here? What is the lawsuit calling for?
Right now, it's in federal court. Of course, they've filed a motion to dismiss, which is completely have no basis for. But, he's not trying to punish the taxpayers. But, at this point, he wants reasonable compensation for what he has been through. There's the claim, we have allegations here of battery, false imprisonment. We understand, and both of my parents were police officers, and I was a police officer for 7 years in Atlanta. I know cops have a hard job. But the problem with this situation is that the officers weren't in a situation where they had to make a split-second decision. They had all of the facts available to them, and to dispel probable cause. And they looked at it and they gave it the middle finger and said, "No, we're going to make an arrest anyway, even though he has it's private property, even though he has a license, and even though he's not a convicted felon." So
how do they claim you can't loiter at a business that you work at and own? I've got like rifles. In my office at the radio studio. I mean, are the cops going to come arrest me because I'm loitering?
If you live in DeKalb County, they might.
So where is this coming from? I mean, I hope they all lose their job. I hope you get $1 million. This is how we punish corruption, or my guns are next. Why are they doing this? I mean, is this some kind of political directive? Or?
Well, I believe there's a lot of pressure on officers to make arrests. It's called getting bodies. You have to have a certain amount of bodies a week, or else you get punished and sent to morning wash. Instead, the upper echelon of the police department, they don't need to be looking at who's getting bodies. They need to look at who's getting convictions. They need to look at the case as it's carried out, or who's making arrests that lead to negotiated pleas. They don't need to be looking at just who's pulling in bodies. So it comes from the top saying, bring us in these bodies. And, if they want a job that doesn't require any thought, they need to, get a job at a factory, putting bolts on a car or on a machine. They don't need to become police officers where people's liberty depends on, their decisions. They had all the information available. Absolutely.
I mean, in the past, you wanted to get bust and actually get real criminals. Now it's just get as many. In fact, I've talked to DWI Task Force Police, and they're honest about it. I've had them in studio, former ones that are gone on to be lawyers. We'll come back and talk about this. That's why I know people that have been arrested just for saying, no, I hadn't been drinking and smarting off. They go, fine, I'm just taking you in anyways. Because it's not about getting a quota on convictions or even indictments or, things that are a real case. It's just raw arrest.
Exactly.
And Austin police on the DWI task force, folks, they will arrest a teetotaling church mouse. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, to talk about this man and the persecution. Right back to our guest. Again, I'm on the road here. David Knight's riding shotgun. We got a lot of breaking news coming up in the next hour. Then Pastor James David Manning's joining us. But Eric Lee, who is a family man who owns a furniture store, where he was arrested for loitering and carrying a firearm in violation of concealed carry law. By the way, he even went and got the concealed carry, which is above and beyond what you got to have in Georgia. A police supervisor came to the scene and approved of the arrest. The county still will not return his gun. He's filed a federal lawsuit. And I love how his lawyer is such a nice lady, and he's so nice. They're apologizing for the lawsuit. It's time we start suing when the government violates our rights, because they're in Congress having hearings now about Obama becoming a dictator, basically, and doing whatever he wants, and the other agencies just acting how they want. The government is out of control. So Eric Lee and your lawyer, Shannon Briley, anything else you guys would like to add about where this is going? Please don't apologize for fighting for my rights and everybody else's rights. God bless you.
Thank you. We just hope that law enforcement can learn from this and understand that their job is very important, and they serve a very important purpose, and it requires that every single call they go on, they put the thought into it that it requires. It's like a medical doctor or any other very serious profession. And we just want training to occur and learning to occur here, so this doesn't continue to happen.
Yeah, she said it. She said it all. She said it all. And all I can say, I just want them to just do the right thing. And I just want justice for everybody. Just do the right thing.
Looking at this, I mean, I'm sure you guys are aware Ammo Land and the NRA have all reported on it. But I know almost everyone I know, including a pretty famous gun person with a national gun TV show. I'll just leave it at that because I know because I'm friends with him. And he's had the police repeatedly called to his little ranch with a shooting range and a berm. And I'm not trying to be mean. It's true. It's Californians that have moved here. They call the police on you when they hear shooting. I know people that have 200-acre ranchettes that are out in the middle of nowhere. People hear gunshots, and the cops come sometimes and actually take your guns or arrest you. I had the manager of a store come up just last week and said it happened to him on his 200-something acre family piece of property. The DPS came in and they said, your neighbors felt scared hearing the gunshots, you're going to jail. I mean, this is a reign of terror. Any comments on that?
I think with a lot of the mass shootings, there's such a stigma now to weapons in general that the police can go in there and arrest somebody who has a gun just because guns in general have become so stigmatized. And people don't understand that we have fundamental basic constitutional rights to own a weapon to prevent the government from getting too big and taking away our rights and living in a police state. And they don't understand that the isolated acts of certain individuals who abuse weapons should not be used to taint, our rights, in the entire population. So I think
exactly, and I mean, increased gun ownership since 1992 has caused a 51% drop in violent crime. That's the FBI's own numbers.
Right, exactly.
Guns are making us safer.
Right. If people were afraid that whoever they were going up to rob or burglarize was armed, they would, certainly think twice before going and, committing these crimes. And they,
sure.
The citizens, law-abiding citizens in the Metro Atlanta area wouldn't be terrorized by crime. If the police want to call by them to decrease, they should encourage people, law-abiding citizens, to have weapons.
Absolutely. Eric, in closing, did you say, I'd be laughing at these police and saying shame on you when they took me to jail for no reason. What did you say to them in the squad car?
We just talking because, I couldn't say too much because when we pulled off, I said, man, why are you doing this? I said, just do the right thing. You know you're wrong. You know you have nothing. He said, well, it's not up to me anymore. And he turned his music up all the way on full blast and took off flying down the road. And I couldn't hear, he couldn't hear me, I couldn't hear him.
Hold on. Let's do 5 more minutes. I got a 1-minute break. I want to do 5 more with you.
This is...
All I know is this. We have an authoritarian directive in Washington that's bipartisan because of a lot of corruption going on. They want a police state. And it's up to all of us to exercise our Second Amendment. That's why I love the open carries that have not caused any problems nationwide like we had at the Alamo, is because it shows, hey, it's not dirty that I have a gun. And I liken it to Martin Luther King going into the places where you couldn't, if you were black, the bathrooms, the hotels, the restaurants. It's the same thing with an open carrier. It's the same thing suing when the police arrest you for your legal, lawful gun. You've got to do it, ladies and gentlemen. You've got to have these marches. So in closing, Eric, anything else you'd like to add? You're the victim of this, the owner going out to their car, and any other tidbits or points you think people should know about where this lawsuit's going now, this federal lawsuit, because the county's done nothing?
All I can say is just beware of the police out there. And I don't know where it's going. We're trying to push and trying to get something done. But all I can say is just pray for us. We're trying to work. We're trying to get something solved for this.
I just saw the new New York police chief came out and said, trust us, we're your friends. Why are they having to talk like that? Because the police are being given political directives that are unconstitutional and aren't common law and aren't common sense. The police are wildly popular when they have good departments and follow the Bill of Rights. So the police, you know, you're saying, again, talking to your lawyer, Shannon Briley, you know, both your police were both your parents were Atlanta police. So growing up in that, I know you probably have a lot of inside baseball on it.
Right.
What do you think's happening here? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was an officer for 7 years. A lot of times people in the community, they will contact the city council and make complaints, and then they'll complain to the white shirts, the upper echelon, and they'll be like, instead of thinking and having thoughtful dialogue with the officers, they'll be like, give me bodies, give me bodies. And, this is, again, like I said before, this is a job that requires thought. It's like being a surgeon or anything else. This isn't putting on parts to a machine at a factory. It requires thought to every single situation, and they don't encourage that. They just say, give me bodies. And, I believe that it's going to take, people, bringing things like this to light. That, yes, it's terrible to have crime, and yes, we want the bad guys to be arrested, but not at the sacrifice of, basic fundamental, human rights that we have.
But they knew him. They knew he had a concealed carry. I mean, they knew he didn't have a criminal record. They knew he was a good guy. And they still just said, okay, instead of saying they were wrong, which they weren't even wrong, instead of just saying, okay, false alarm, have a nice day, they had to take him to jail. It's that idea of, well, a lot of departments don't want to hire intelligent police now, and that's because the establishment wants a tyranny.
Exactly. And, he knew he was wrong. That's why he turned up the radio on the way to the jail. He knew he was wrong. He didn't want to feel guilted by, Mr. Lee. And, they count on people sweeping things under the rugs like an arrest is no big deal. Well, it was a big deal for Eric. And, and it was a big deal that they continue to hold his property. So I think...
Oh, yeah, that's the big issue. Still hadn't got his gun back.
They continue to endorse this behavior.
Well, you're a good lawyer, Shannon Briley, and
Thank you.
If I was ever in Georgia and needed one, I'll give you a call. Are there any websites we can visit? Are there ways we can support you guys?
You can go to www.brileylaw.com, BRILEYLAW.com, and I have a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Briley Law. And I'm sorry, I've been sick this week, so that's my voice is hoarse.
Oh, you sound great. Listen, Eric Lee, God bless you for what you're doing. We'll check in with you again as the lawsuit develops, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, there's folks fighting back against just out-of-control government, folks. So I'm telling you, this government is out of control. I want America back. Stay with us. My friends, I've studied history. It's not hard to do. Tyrants do the same things over and over again. Their playbook's actually pretty small. And they call slavery different things, but it's basically the same thing. And we know that we're already deep into social engineering, the collapse of society. And I've been hammering it the last, 3-4 years. It's been really obvious. Obama's been in now for 6 years, that he is becoming a dictator. And I remember having Pastor David Manning on, Pastor James David Manning, 6-7 years ago when he's first talking about Obama. And he was saying, he's going to become a dictator. He's not going to leave. I tell you, he's pure evil. And I'm like, come on. He's just a front man to push their agenda. Presidents are puppets. Come on. Let's not. Come on. That's going to add to the division here. We need to, they're trying to sell him as the second coming of Christ and Abraham Lincoln all rolled into one, but can't be that bad. And now I've got to say that Manning has been correct and I have been wrong in understating how bad Obama would be. Let me explain something. He put our military under NATO UN command, and when Congress threatened him and said this is unconstitutional and illegal, he sent them letters and had the Joint Chiefs testify belligerently that they get their orders from the UN and NATO. He played that audio. 3 separate hearings, House and Senate Armed Services Committees in the last 3 years, 3 times. He is shutting down, it's over 500 now. They're shutting down 500 more coal power plants that are totally clean, supply 50+% of our power. Well, they did. Now plants supply like 30-something. They're shutting us down. And then General Electric can scale up and make more money. They're exempt. That's martial law. He's legalizing all the illegals, basically. And this is in the news, by fiat, without even an order. He just tells them on the phone what to do. Like he's beyond Kim Jong-il of North Korea or Kim Jong-un. At least they'll even do a fake order on paper and put a fake stamp on it. He just says, hey, my word is God, God Emperor. He's now doing it with Obamacare. They're saying, yes, make him a dictator, he'll fix it. Now Democrats are saying, let's make him president for a third term, or let's just suspend things, or let's just... And it's a whole bunch of areas, folks, and they've gotten away with Fast and Furious, the IRS persecuting Christians and gun groups and pro-lifers, and the FBI covering it up. And I mean, Benghazi and Fast and Furious, it goes on and on and on and on. And then I realized in Libya and invading Africa with UN armies that are just murdering people in mass, backed by Muslims and animists, killing Christians everywhere. I mean, if it's evil, they're doing it. They don't even do it for an interest now, except to further evil. Again, it's scary when you got corrupt boss hog politicians that do bad stuff for power. But when they're doing it, even though it's destroying Obama, even though it's making him be hated, they don't care, because it is a mission to bankrupt America. Obamacare, all of it is on record to bring this country down. Now, the architect of it, Ezekiel Emanuel, admits it. So he joins us via phone to the bottom of the hour with a quick pop-in. I want to get him for a full hour soon via video Skype from his ATLAH TV studios there in Harlem, where he actually tries to preach a message that's going to get people out of the plantation that is socialism. And he feeds hundreds of children a day and others with their soup kitchens. And he joins us right now, so he's a really good guy. Pastor Manning, thank you for coming on with us today, sir.
Oh, Alex, thank you for having me today. Real joy.
Well,
real pleasure.
Thank you. I mean, you've got the floor for the little bit of time we've got. He is a dictator now. Now, the question is he making the office a dictatorship? Will he leave?
Well,
but
I think that we need to understand Obama in terms of modern dictatorship. Generally, when we think about dictators like Hitler, Mussolini, or Lenin, or others, we think about them using the military to deploy their policies and to keep people in control. Obama has found a way to use an economic, racial, and social policies as if the military. In other words, what Obama does with these policies of economics, with racism, which is the undergirding of his presidency, and then social issues, which are anti-Christian, anti-God, many of them very communist and very Marxist, is his new army. And so he's a modern dictator. We have to think about him in those terms.
Man, you really are smart. I mean, the way you crystallize things, that's it. Obama is the modern 2.0 dictator.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the next thing we need to begin to think about is what are we going to do about him? And in your opening piece, you stated that I stated 6 years ago that he would not leave office and that he would become a dictator. In fact, he came in as a dictator. What we need to think about now is how are we going to move him if we're going to save America? How are we going to get him out of office? Because he has such power over the courts, Alex. I mean, the very fact that Obamacare was approved by Judge Roberts indicates this man has power over the courts. Franklin Roosevelt tried to pack the courts so he could get his policies through. All Obama has to do is pick up the phone, and his policies are approved. So how are we going to get him out of office? What are we going to do? We can't rely upon the Republicans or the conservatives or whoever it is that is supposed to be opposing him, because they're not doing that. If we're going to save this nation and stop Obama from trashing it and doing what he wants to do with it, we have to start thinking about strategies and not relying upon the electoral system or the Republicans or the media, which is the other part of his government, to be able to save America.
Very well said. And I think we've got to communicate to people that it's a modern form of technocratic dictatorship. And I was thinking they were setting up dictatorial divisions and systems so that the office could be dictatorial. But they are acting like they don't care what we think now, and that they are trying to bring the country down and bankrupt it so that he can then pose as a savior. How do you expect him to try to stay in office? Because for the first time, I'm starting to think that may be the plan.
Well, I suspect that he's most probably going to have some sort of a false flag. I think he's going to need martial law. He's going to need the military in order to be able to stay in office. And there's no telling what he'll do in terms of some sort of a false flag that he'll create. Maybe a crisis within America, some sort of a possible racial crisis. While I don't think that might be it. On the other hand, Alex, the thing that we have to be very mindful of is that there are a large number of Americans who are ready now to revolt, and they very well may give him what he wants. On the other hand, we need a revolution in this nation.
So we want it to be like Lexington or Concord. We want to work to not let it get physical and win the info war, the war of ideas. But if they start stuff, I think we should be more, Christ-like and at key points.
Well, I'm not so sure we should be so Christ-like unless we're going to be the Christ of the sword that I preach for the most part. I think. Well,
let me just finish the statement. Let me just finish the statement so you know where I'm coming from.
Okay.
I'm saying we have to wait for the right time to where it morally they fire first, and then we have the moral high ground. We don't want them to trick us into something preemptive. The problem is they'll blow up another federal building like OKC, the same attorney general was deputy then, clearly involved, to then blame it on the liberty movement. So I understand that we may have to defend ourselves. My problem is that they may blow something up and blame it on us. So the last thing we want to do is offensively do anything. Go ahead.
Well, you definitely don't want that to happen. You don't want them to blame us on 9/11 or some other event or the Oklahoma event. That we don't want to have happen. What we also have to think about, Alex, is that Obama controls the economy. He controls Wall Street. So we're going to need economic power, not just military power or revolutionary power. We need economic power, and that's the thing that we're lacking most in. I mean, all of America is armed to the teeth. There are people all over America that are ready to rise up if they have to save this nation. Not because they're belligerent, not because they hate the nation, not because they're just warmongering, but they realize that we need to be able to save this nation militarily. But the problem is this, is that we don't have the kind of economic power or the media power to be able to withstand a Obama attack, which is what he's doing now. So how do we get that together? How do we do that is the question.
I think you're right. People better support alternative real media like never before, whether it's what you're doing at ATLAH, and we're going to give that site out in just a moment, and we'll put it up on screen, or Infowars or Drudge or any of the sites. In fact, Richard, will you scroll down so I can put his site up on air for folks? It's atlah.org, atlah.org. It's an excellent site. We need to do that. I think we need to just get the word out. But I'll tell you this. I was talking to an Army officer just yesterday. I'll just leave it at that. And he said 98% of the military knows what's going on now. Now, just 6 months ago, he said it was about 80%. He said 98% know that there's an attempt to overthrow the country and to bring in tyranny. And I think we need to get the word out that we're not alone, and that but we're not connected because we don't have the media and we don't have the financial system. So it's really a bizarre situation, almost like a Mexican standoff.
Well, I think we're going to have to attack the media as the first line of Obama defense. The media serves as his pawns or as his bishops. We're going to have to go after the media. We're going to have to support media like you. And I'm just not patronizing you, Alex, but we're going to have to begin to listen to sources like you and other sources that are out there. But we're going to have to attack as the first line of defense all of the media, whether it's conservative or liberal media. They all do the exact same thing. And when we can bring them down, we can stop the disinformation campaign. Because people are sitting there in their comfortable chairs, listen to Fox News, thinking that somehow or another Mitt Romney or somebody else is going to overthrow Obama and we're going to get America back. We've got to take down that part of Obama's process.
I agree.
We have got to attack him, and then we can go after him economically.
No, you're right. It's the idea of the loyal opposition when those guys are all part of the same power structure and they're also scared. I mean, those big people, it's really hard for people that are already part of the system to stand up. But look at how they're going after Ted Cruz and Rand Paul. You can always tell who's real by who they attack.
You absolutely can. And I think that if we began to work on that strategy and look at how the politicians are attacked and look at what Fox News does or what the liberal or what MSNBC does, if we began to consider that if we're going to have a revolution, let's do it the way Obama has taken the nation. He has taken
Stay there. Yeah, this is intriguing. Pastor Manning, amazing.
In the last 50 years,
This is a short segment. And then we have Pastor James David Manning joining us for part of the next. And we have a bunch of big news I've got to get to. But I tell you, if I lived in Harlem, I know whose church I'd be going to. If we had more preachers in this country like Pastor Manning, we would not be in the shape we are. People have just become so complacent, they've got to find their spirit of resistance before things really go to hell in a handbasket, because Homeland Security, all of these top generals and colonels at the Navy War College, the Army War College, you name it, West Point, we have links to it up on Infowars.com, are saying, we're preparing for war with gun owners. We're going to come after you. We will take your gun from your cold, dead hand. And the military's totally waking up because they're being told, prepare for war with America. So I think they've miscalculated. I mean, the military is not afraid to go to war. And, I mean, the military people I know that are multi-generation military are the most honorable, including people in my family. And let me tell you, they're not looking for a fight, folks. They're very sad about everything. But now the resolve is beginning to be, okay, it's going to be a civil war. I just feel sorry for the police and all the idiots that are going to be part of the New World Order who want to have this civil war. I mean, look at this headline. Colonel who vowed to disarm Americans works with Homeland Security. He teaches at West Point. And it says, oath-violating colonel also made veiled death threats against bloggers. Well, my goodness, if you read his article in Esquire, it sounds like a little kid. Like, oh, yeah, we'll kill you. We got the Army. We're big. We're tough. I mean, this is obviously somebody who I don't think seen a lot of combat, or he's nuts. Because all the combat vets I know, and I mean Special Forces people, I mean people that have been in 28 years and seen stuff, I mean, just unbelievable. They would never... I mean, I know people that, you know, that have worked in and around the boys from Virginia, and I don't mean the CIA. The Virginia boys are like plainclothes military above Delta Force. And all I can, Pastor Manning, I've got you here to talk. We got 4 minutes till break. I'm going to shut up. You hear what I'm saying. This is getting so bad. Do you think Obama's bit off more than he can chew, or do you think that this is part of the plan?
Oh, absolutely not. He has not bit off more than he can chew. And I think his plan is in place and working right now perfectly. The problem is that we've got to deal with is that we're in the game very late. And if there is a military coup, I know there are many generals and people within the military who recognize what's happening to this nation and would love to be able to save it. But I don't think they're going to get the kind of support that they need in order to be able to do it. And I don't think that a coup in the military would deliver us from the economic power that Obama is possessing. And there's another thing that we're not observing as well in terms of the social and racial issue. I'm becoming very concerned about Obama's alliance with Pope Francis. I'm very concerned about them walking along the same social, if you will, liberal path that destroys the integrity of the Word of God and puts these two powers together. Alex, I'm very concerned about that and whether a military response can handle where we are right now.
I hear you. No, I can't believe that the president has become a dictator and they're starting to have a few hearings, but it's still not a big deal. I mean, because this is what happens historically. Countries get to where they put up with evil, and then we empower the dictator to become a Hitler or a Mao. Pastor Manning, do you think we can turn this around?
I'm confident that we can, but we must acknowledge what I said just a few moments ago. We are late to the game, but we have the majority on our side. We have the morality on our side. We have all of the issues that we need on our side. We just need to acknowledge what they are, put together a plan. Obama has been planning this with the New World Order and others for years. We're late to the game. We're just getting in here, but we can win, and we can win handily. There's no way we should be defeated. So, yes, but we need to get started, and we need to get started immediately, if not beyond before that.
Well, you say, not use their tactics, but beat them knowing their game. What's your idea?
Well, first of all, as I said before, we got to take down the media, Alex. I mean, we have got to take down what I refer to as the dung-head media, because they've got people pacified into thinking that Washington Republicans or whoever or politicians are going to solve our problems. We got to stop people from thinking that, wake them up to the fact that they need to get into the streets, not necessarily with arms or with margin, but they need to get into the program of looking at what can we do economically, socially, and racially to bring this nation back together again. And once they recognize that Washington is not going to solve it, that it must be done by grassroots movement, at least we'll have a start at that present time. And what we'll also discover is that Obama's power is not as great as one would think that it is if the people that know the truth simply rise up.
Sure. Well, somebody can kick your butt if you lay down and let them.
Absolutely.
We just got to stand up. I want to come back and go over some issues with you and pick your brain, because I'll tell you, you're just really a smart guy, and I mean that seriously. Pastor Manning really saw stuff long before I did on this issue of Obama.
We're on the march. Cut 'em down, tell 'em it got
and you can see the masterly evil of the establishment grooming Obama, we now know from a very young age, just like it's out of a horror movie, where they're grooming, the Antichrist. It's Rosemary's Baby. It really is the stuff of legend, how his whole family, CIA, Pastor Manning's had the CIA and FBI come to his office and threaten him. We've had the same thing. FBI, Secret Service, you name it. All sorts of things behind the scenes. I mean, the minute they can, folks, they want to come after everybody and basically force a civil war. That's probably going to be their plan. And we just need to not have it happen. And again, it sounds real wimpy on air to say, I don't want a military coup, or I think we should lay down to an attack by these people. This isn't about a military fight. If we don't respond when they attack us in the first wave of a purge, even with a controlled press, the message will get out that they did it. But here's the deal. They're not going to do that. If they try a purge, they will blow up federal buildings filled with daycare children. We know the names of who did Oklahoma City. I've interviewed the police officers, the head of the K-9 unit, Don Browning from Oklahoma City. He knew the feds did it. They came to his office. He's listed their names on air and said, we're going to kill you and your wife if you don't shut up. By the way, I got death threats when I had him on, and I mean the real ones. Because the people that did that run the Justice Department right now. And again, it's like stepping on the edge of a cliff whenever I get on air and talk about this kind of stuff, okay? I mean, so when I say we need to have restraint, it's not that I'm not willing to get in a fight. It's not going to hurt the New World Order to have a shootout with the state police. Before we're going to kill these people, we really need to go out and try to wake them up. That's the point, and that's what Manning's getting at, is we have got to absolutely reach out to police and military right now. The military is really woken up. Police are starting to, but they kind of pick them to where they'll follow orders, so that they see the rest of the story and get uncompartmentalized. Now, Manning, Pastor Manning, I want to give you the last 6-7 minutes here. You've got the floor. Don't pause for me. Any other ideas, how we turn this around, where you see this going? Maybe citizens that are at Obama events yell out things. I mean, little stuff like "you're a liar" in Congress. We don't know. There's all sorts of little things that could bring down the facade.
Well, when we talk about a coup and a military confrontation, we have to keep in mind that Obama comes from a very violent background, though he tries to present himself as the boy next door. Obama's the product of Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dohrn and all that weather underground crowd. He comes from a very violent background. Keep that in mind. His association with Islam is very violent. But I think in terms of strategy, Alex, one of the things that we would look at after we take down the media, and we need to do that, because without that we're going to continually be beat by Obama. We need to go after Obamacare. That is an Achilles heel. It's a massive tax program that's unconstitutional, that's socialist, that's communist at its core. But he needs young people to be able to register and be a part of that process. If young people don't register, Obamacare falls apart. Now, the whole business with the rollout and the fact that the computer did not work, they're going to get that together at some point in time. But if we can go out, launch a national campaign with a broadcast such as yours and others to reach young people, that they don't sign up, that they're not cowed into signing up for Obamacare, if that can happen, then the whole thing falls apart. Because at that point, Obama will not have the financing to be able to keep Obamacare alive. And what he'll have to do at that point is do something more dictatorial than he's doing right now. So I would suggest that what we would do, number one, is take down the media. Number two is take down Obamacare. And doing it through the people, pardon me, doing it through the young people who don't want Obamacare, and then turning them around against him, because they were all for him at one point in time, but not anymore. And they're definitely not going to sign up for do those two things, at least we'll begin to put a crack in his armor. And we'll begin to educate the people, and we can take him down economically the way he's trying to take us down economically and socially.
Again, you pause for me and interject, but everything you're saying is just spot on with the research and great ideas. And I just thank God for your leadership and many others. And I wish there were more people out there who understood all these different nuances, because it's scary to know people are waking up, but that there's not that many prominent people that are willing to come up with a battle plan. But let me ask you this question. I've noticed evil loves to betray its own minions historically, and I don't understand that as a person that doesn't know betrayal. I don't like betraying even people that are enemies and bad. In fact, crushing them, it feels like a betrayal, even though I'm not betraying them. I'm standing up for myself. But with Obama, he loves, here's an example, Barton Springs. I went down there 2 months ago, to the big open pool. They got like 20 lifeguards, one of the biggest natural pools in the U.S., spring-fed. And one after the other, they walked over and apologized. And they said, I thought you were wrong about Obamacare. They just cut me from 40 hours to 20. And they take more money out of my check now, and I work another job, and I go to UT, and I eat ramen noodle. My parents are poor. I don't have any money. They're taking like $50 more out of my check. Like you said, they lied on the news, and everywhere these poor Obama people apologize. How could the communists even betray their own idiot followers? And I'm not trying to be mean, but it's just, how do you hurt poor people like this? And how does he think he'll get away with that?
I think the thing we have to always keep in focus about communism and socialism and Marxism and Islam is that it has never worked. There is no nation on the planet where it has worked, where it has proven to win the love of the people, where we in a democracy and in capitalism here love our nation for what it is. Most communist people that are at the bottom of the communist rung don't care for communism and want to get out from underneath it. And it takes the military to keep communism going. So I think that when we look at what Obama's trying to do and what the New World Order thinks that they can accomplish, however, they're using more high technology now than they've used in perhaps a Mao Zedong or in Lenin's communism. We're going to have to recognize that communism really at the heart of the matter with people doesn't work. So how do we get the message out rather than talking about a different political ideal, such as a Republican versus a Democrat? We've got to tell people about the ills of communism. We got to go into, and I think our fourth program would be, we've got to get into the universities and into the schools, because that's where they're indoctrinating our young people into thinking that communism is a good thing and that Obama's program is a good thing. So we have to, if we do these basic things, we win. If we don't do them, we definitely lose.
Well, I want to be clear. I mean, when you see how Obama tries to take the radical Islamicist Al-Qaeda people from Saudi Arabia and to inject them into Syria for 2.5 years and then call that peace, I mean, it really does show that this particular elite we have, I mean, look how the NFL promotes him. Look at how the whole system's giving their power to him, showing the power structures behind him. Do you think Obama's paying off the way they thought? Because as you said, if Obamacare is blowing up in their face, well, they knew it was going to blow up in the face. So he's got to become a dictator because his whole agenda is going to backfire. They're going to end up losing a whole generation to believing in communism because they're giving them a taste of it before they have full dictatorship in.
Well, if you look at the stock market, when Obamacare is blowing up in his face, but if you look at the stock market, he is greatly rewarding people that have invested in him. If you're talking about major people in the movies or in business and entrepreneurship, they are reaping great rewards, the greatest in the history of this nation. They reaping their financial rewards as for supporting him. But they're just a small percentage of the population. And they're not in control, but they are.
And it's in fiat devalued dollars, and it's not going to be worth anything. It's all a fraud. It's all hot air.
But that's true. That's true. And I think that the American people need to wake up and begin to, and of course, prepare themselves for when the financial collapse comes, and it will come, whether Obama's in power or not. That's coming, and that will be another opportunity once the financial collapse comes for those those of us who've been out here on the battlefield to take the power reins at that time when the economy is weak and people who have depended on their billions to be able to give them power. We have power by our commitment. We have power by our love for this nation. We have power by our love for one another. That's our power, and we're rich in the billions in that, and we ought to use it as much as we possibly can.
I agree. I can feel your power, Pastor Manning, because you have love, and I can hear it and see it in other people's voices. I just feel sad for the average person. Doesn't seem to have any discernment. I mean, you could take one look at Obama and tell he's a devil. I just didn't know how bad. What in your spirit told you 6, 7 years ago or even longer that Obama was so bad?
Yeah, well, you remember I was on your show very early on and talking to you about Obama being the son of Satan. And a lot of people call him the Antichrist, and that will work. You certainly don't want to throw that out. But Obama is inherently evil. When you listen to what he is saying over against a reality of where we are as the people, you know that he is lying, and that he is lying profusely. Obama did this one thing, Alex. He promised the world, not just America, but he promised the world what they wanted to hear and knew that he could not deliver it. He promised the world you were going to have peace and you're going to have prosperity. We're going to have a unity of the people. We're going to bring all the nations to the table. We're going to have a unity between Muslims and Jews. We're going to have a unity between blacks and whites. We're going to have a wealth where everybody has got wealth and power and prosperity. He promised that not just to America, but to the world. And that's why people fell for him. But the opposite of that is to look at that and know that he can't deliver that. He cannot. So he's lying. Why would?
Well, he's delivered the opposite. He's delivered the opposite.
Absolutely. And that's my point. I knew that's exactly what he was going to do. So we have to recognize that anyone that would lie like that to the American people and to the world has to be ultimately evil, so that he can take away their liberties, take away their freedom, take away their economic base. So when you see Obama, when I saw him 6 years ago in that perspective, and talking the things he was, and saying the things he was saying, and denying what I knew to be the truth about him, it was very easy to see how evil he was, and how people were searching for it, looking for it. And you got to also realize that George Bush was such a disaster that they were looking for anything to bring them up out of the
But look at how now that I pull back, I see the elite behind this, but it's even more than they could orchestrate the way it was all orchestrated perfectly. It really is satanic. Everything we've seen has been orchestrated. As you know, the Bible talks about the mystery of evil, how it works so well together. And you can really now see on Obama a super evil design, one of the most evil I've ever even heard of in history, with a high-tech integration. And I shudder to think what we're going to see out of this figurehead, out of this production, out of everything behind him, out of all the evil behind him.
I wish you would send me the clip of what you just said. I'd love to play it on our broadcast every day, because it puts succinctly what we need to be aware of. Now that you've said that and that you've demonstrated that truth, how do we educate the people? How do we get out there and tell the people who are still hoping against hope that Obama's going to change, that he's going to make the world a great place, even though they see themselves without jobs, they see themselves losing their employment, their income, they see themselves losing their family, losing their children, losing this nation, and yet they're still hoping that somehow or another that he is going to do what he promised 6 years ago. How do we educate people? That just small clip you just said just a few moments ago.
Well, if you look at it, he's dangling again that it's coming, hope's around the corner, give me more power, I'll fix it. And then they consciously try to wreck the country. It's not like they're screwing things up on accident. They want to screw it up. You know they're doing it. I guess you just explained to people that you better follow your gut and your heart and your eyes. I mean, the thing is, it's all right there, and I think people are afraid of the responsibility. They want to, like you said earlier, think that the Republicans are going to save them, and they better figure out that praying to God is going to save them, because if people pray to God and repent and get on their knees and seek a reprieve of the nation, then God will change their heart and give them discernment and rise them up in little ways, but also in big ways, depending on who you are or where you're at. And together, just like evil works through Obama and his people, we have have to ask God to use us as vessels against them in this battle. But God knows there's free will, so gives us free will. The devil manipulates against free will. We have to consciously and spiritually ask God to cleanse us and use us and sanctify us every day and put on the armor against the enemy.
There's an event in the Bible where there were two prophets, the prophet Elisha, and he had a young protege working with him. And they were surrounded by a mighty army that were outside of the canyon where they were at, and getting ready to come in to kill the prophet and the young man. And the prophet the young boy said, they're going to kill us, they're going to kill us. The prophet prayed that the young boy's eyes would be open so he could see the mighty host of angels that were standing there to protect him against that mighty army. And the angels were certainly going to win and overpower that army. What you have just said and what we've got to do is that we have got to pray that God will open the eyes of the people so they can see how evil Obama is. And you made mention of the 2 Chronicles 7:14. If we pray and repent, that God will heal our land. But beyond that, I am convinced, Alex, that if we launch a campaign of praying for people that God would open their eyes, when they see Obama, they will see unadulterated evil in its purest and most evil form. There's never been anybody in America in leadership as evil as this man is. And, of course, his beauty dazzles everybody, and so therefore they're not able to get to the core of who he is spiritually. People's eyes just need to be open to how evil this man is that has taken over our nation and is seeking to destroy it. But I will say this, I know we're going to win. God has not established this
Yes, Pastor Manning?
to give it to Obama.
I just lost audio to the network. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Alex. Yeah. Pastor Manning is still on?
Yes, I'm still here.
Yes. Go ahead and finish up, Pastor Manning. You said that we are going to win, and I agree with you. I think so.
We are going to win. God is not going to give this nation over to Obama. And even though many people are asserting that, well, we've been so wicked, we've disavowed God, God's turned us over to a reprobate nation. But no, that's not the case at all. We are going through some struggles right now, but we will not lose this great nation. We will not lose this pinnacle of power and presentation of God on this planet. We will win.
Well, Pastor Manning, I think this is the most powerful interview I've ever done with you or heard, period. And I think definitely the Spirit of the Lord's with us today. Let's just agree together, and I'll have you back soon, that we should both, to our audiences, promote praying that the eyes of America and the world be open, and that we say that prayer. And I know I'll say that during the break, and I know you'll say it, Pastor Manning. Thank you. So, will you stay there and come back and say a prayer on air in the final segment?
Yes, I can do that. I will, sure.
Okay, and the show's over in 10 minutes, so we're going to come back. He'll say the prayer, and then I'll hit a few final news stories with David Knight. You better watch Folks, they have a false love that they sell everybody, but it's all about betrayal and tyranny. We've got to rediscover the Bill of Rights and Constitution and due process and individual liberty. Evil always sells you the idea that it's going to bring you empowerment and individuality, but it really brings collectivism that is slavery. Some of the headlines up on Infowars.com are just incredible. Colonel who vowed to disarm Americans works with Homeland Security and threatens bloggers. I mean, these people are just roaring with their tyranny. And you look at photos of this colonel, he just looks like a power-crazed narcissist. Also, again, Army officer says, we will pry your guns from your cold, dead fingers. Unbelievable. I mean, just taunting us. Mandela Love Fest ignores dark side of legacy. We've got an article up there about things that, it's just a fact. They traded one evil for another. Homeland Security searches vehicles at ferry crossing checkpoint. We've got an article up on drudgereport.com on the right-hand side. It was red-linked earlier, where they're going to make you go through biometric scanners and like prison cells at the airport. It's all prisoner training. But Pastor Manning, I'm going to let you get out of here. I know you're a busy man. ATLAH.org, ATLAH World Ministries. They're in Harlem. And God bless you for the work you do. But please just give us a brief or heartfelt prayer. It can be long or whatever, about opening the eyes. And I think everybody should say this prayer daily. And really think about it and tell others about it, that the spell, the evil spell of deception be lifted from our eyes so that we can really, really see good from evil.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you again for having me on your broadcast today. I really, really appreciate it. But let's go to the Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you so very much for allowing us to be in this great nation, to be born here, to be officially born here, to have our birth certificate here, to know and to be a part of the process that has made this nation great. We recognize, Almighty God, that it is you that has blessed us against many other nations that we see around the world that don't have our joy, don't have our prosperity, don't have our love, and all the things that you've made such a pinnacle and such a city on a hill. Now, Heavenly Father, there's a great darkness and deception that has come over our nation in the person of Obama. And it is my prayer, and I unite with everyone else today, that an appeal to you to open the eyes of the people. Open their eyes, Lord, that they might see this awful evil that is now seated in Washington at the White House. And then open their hearts, Almighty God, and give them the courage to be able to stand up for truth and to stand up for the unborn and to stand up for those that have worked so hard to make this great nation what it is, to stand up for those that are being maligned by and duped and pimped by Obama. Open their eyes and their ears and stuff their hearts full of courage that we might march forward. And we are praising you right now for the victory, for we know we will not lose, but we most assuredly will win in the day that you have set aside. And in your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen and amen.
Amen. Absolutely, and that's why that particular preacher that had his own prayer breakfast and mildly criticized Obama, they audited him and came after him, and it came out that it was ordered. And it just shows they're afraid of true men of God, true women of God who follow that. And folks, you know, this is not a preacher show, but in great times of evil, we have to just get down to the very bottom here. This is a spiritual battle. Pastor Manning, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Alex. God bless you, sir.
We'll talk to you again soon. There he goes. He was only going to be on for 20 minutes. He's very busy, but he was able to stay the whole hour with us. We'll get him back on because we got him on short notice. But I tell you, folks, the evil is real. We're going to do a little bit of overdrive and finish some news, but then 40 seconds out to break, David Knight riding shotgun. That was pretty powerful info.
It was very powerful. And, you know, when he's talking about how evil Obama is, it's just what we were talking about yesterday, the way he's betraying these people who are at the bottom of the wage pyramid. And at the same time he's taking them down with Obamacare, he's also putting on, saying that he's for their minimum wage being waged.
Explain that. Explain that when we come back. Yeah. Kicks them out of the workforce, folks. They cut
GCN.
Jobs. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Visit
Infowars.com /show to find the audio feeds if your station doesn't carry this. Alex Jones here. And I want to tell you. So you bring in Obamacare that raises the payroll tax on the poorest people, makes companies have to lay people off or cut from 40 to 20 hours. And then you raise the minimum wage because you've devalued the dollar. But then that just makes everybody have to lay folks off. It is such a genius plan. Then you go on welfare. And then they keep cutting the welfare, but the amount you get. So then you can't even live on that. And then you go, well, give me higher taxes on people that do have money, even though that could never actually pay for things if you do the math. David Knight, you were trying to make a point when the break came.
Yeah, and it's beyond that even. Now they're talking about $27 billion in new gas taxes that that's going to hit the working poor very hard. And then, of course...
And tracker switches in the cars. We told you that was coming, yeah.
That's right. They'll add that in addition. So you'll still have your gas taxes there, but then they're going to add an additional transportation tax to everybody. And then you've got the secret economic nuclear bomb that he's going to hit the working poor with, and that's a Trans-Pacific Partnership. That's his goal to do that by the end of the year. It's on a fast track. So he's doing these things to the people who are suffering, and these people who are out there striking as fast food workers and other people who need more of a minimum, need more wages, they are in a very difficult situation, but they don't understand what's going on. And that's why when Pastor Manning was talking about having their eyes open, that's what's really important, that they understand and see what's going on behind this, that
sure.
They're not going to be any better off if somebody just gives them more pieces of paper.
Well, sure. Let's say you pay an employee $15 an hour. You're really, last time I did the math, paying them like $21 an hour with all the FICA and fees and unemployment insurance and everything else. So if you're paying somebody $20 an hour, it's more like $29 an hour.
That's right.
So if somebody's getting like $10 an hour, it's like 12 or 13. People just don't know. And then what you do is you just lay people off. I mean, it is unbelievable. It's all scientifically done. It's so frustrating.
A lot of stuff
we never.
hidden.
Yep, go ahead.
A lot of stuff that's hidden, just like you're talking about, the hidden cost.
Go ahead, David.
When you see the FICA, the Social Security withdrawals on your paycheck, you only see half of it. The employer is paying the other half directly to the government. They don't want you to see the full cost of your FICA. Of course, the employer sees it, self-employed people see it. But in the same way, they want to pretend and make a big show out of saying, we're going to help you by giving you more dollars when your purchasing power is not going to go up. People are going to still have to cover their expenses. Obama's never run anything. He's just put out mandates, and he can't even produce a website. Even with $600 million, he can't put out a website. So he's never had any experience having to run something, having to meet a payroll. Anybody that's had a business, you know this as well, Alex. You know, many times you'll have to go where the business owner who's invested his money, invested his time, will have to not take a pay. Will have to go without pay sometimes just to make ends meet until he can make an adjustment.
Well, exactly. I mean, for about a year, I made the decision, losing money, to spend emergency capital that we put in a business account. And then I launched some stuff to be able to get plenty of capital and to continue and expand and people support us. But I love folks out there, you know, the enemy's thing is that anybody in a free market, you know, how dare you sell things to have, you know, your own free and independent media? It's better to just get government bailout money like MSNBC or taxpayer money like NPR. It's almost $500 million a year. Last time I checked, it's so screwed up. The idea that we're not supposed to actually pay for things ourselves and run our own operations. People have no idea what it's like to be a quote business owner. I mean, we're a mission of liberty, but I have to run a business to pay for things. And people don't know what it's like to have the bureaucrats come into your office. They don't know what it's like to be harassed. They don't know what it's like to be audited. They don't know what it's like to be screwed with constantly. And we don't whine about it on air because to me, it's like a game. I mean, the more people attack me, the more energy I get. It can be 7 o'clock at night and somebody attacks me, makes stuff up. I just suddenly have all this new energy, and God's given me that gift. But we're not going to give up. It's important to support Infowars.com. It's important to get the products at InfowarsLife.com, InfowarsHealth.com, InfowarsStore.com, different lines on all those sites. And I didn't get to all the news. We didn't get to the Japan news. They're talking about fascism in their parliament, in their government area. And the nightly news is 7 o'clock tonight, and I'll be back 4 to 6 this Sunday. Thanks for the great job, David Knight. Thanks to the crew, and thanks to all you, the listeners. God bless you all. In the last 50 years, iodine